What up, IB Nation? I'm Vince D'Addario. That's Ryan Roberts, and it is Friday. It's the best day of the week, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Friday free-for-all mailbag where you dictate what we talk about, which is my favorite. No prep, so I'm down with that, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited for what you guys are going to bring to the table today. Huge announcement last night. Obviously, CJ Carr commits to the University of Notre Dame, 5-star quarterback in the 24 class. So go ahead and check that out. We had him on our show last night and talked about his commitment and how excited he is and, you know, why he made his commitment and all that stuff. And, of course, we break down the film and all that jazz as well. So make sure you check that out over on the YouTube channel. And then, of course, today, well, I shouldn't say of course, but today at 4 o'clock, Ryan, there's going to be show number two. Show number two, 4 o'clock. It is a recruiting show. We'll call it that. We'll call it a recruiting show at 4 o'clock. So make sure that you hit that notification bell, everybody, so that you know when that show's coming, even though I'm telling you it's 4 o'clock. So another show on tap. So the mailbag show will not be a marathon today because we got to get ready for another show at 4 o'clock. So make sure you stay tuned for that. It's basically going to be IB all afternoon, and I'm excited about that. Couple ground rules for today, everybody. As you'll notice, our buddy Brian is not in the chat at the moment, but have no fear. He will be on at about 2 o'clock. And at that time, he will address all of the Dante Moore excitement. So we are going to kind of steer clear of that for the first hour. We will let Brian take all of that. As Caleb Collins would say, he will spill the tea with Dante. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. But we are going to answer every other one of your questions as much as we possibly can over the next 53 minutes before Brian joins us, Ryan. So I think I have nailed everything. Oh, and one final announcement. We do have Sean's show is going to premiere. Sean Steyer's show is going to premiere Monday at 6 o'clock. I will let Brian reveal the official name of the show. We put a thread over on the message board asking everybody what they thought the name of the show should be. And it took until the 4th page for somebody to come up with one that we are actually going to use. So I'm excited about it. I think the name is awesome, but I'll let Brian reveal the name. But that show will premiere on Monday at 6 o'clock. Sean and I will actually be on that show together. And then it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, forever. No, for the foreseeable future. So Fridays will be an off day for that show, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday moving forward. So really excited about that show. It's going to be completely different than anything we do during the day. And so Sean's really excited about that. So, and as we are at Irish Breakdown. So, Ryan, without further ado, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was unfortunately not permitted to be on the CJ Carr episode last night.
That's great.
Not permitted for not put out by anybody on Irish Breakdown. It was a family obligation, unfortunately, last night. But I got to catch the CJ Carr interview late last night after you all were finished. Man, really well-spoken kid. It was impressed. I could not believe you just finished up his sophomore year of high school. Like
Seriously.
Very well-spoken. But I'm excited to get into this now. Obviously, like you said, there's a additional show today, 4 o'clock Eastern. That's going to be recruiting related. That's all we're going to say about it for now. So make sure that you tune in for the rest of this show and that one. Excited to talk mailbag as always.
All right. Sounds good. So we have a super chat to kind of kick things off here. Wade Garrett, thank you very much, Wade. It says, this is for Brian to, I think he meant to say sing, but he said to sign the Notre Dame fight song on the air on this beautiful Friday. I won't be able to see the show today. I wish everyone all the best. First of all, thank you for the super chat, Wade. I told Brian about this before we went on the air, and he said it's going to take a lot more than a $5 super chat for him to sing publicly on the air. So, or he could just learn an international sign language and then just sign it. I'm not even going to pretend because I don't know it. But yeah, so there you go. But thank you, Wade, for the super chat. Really appreciate that very, very, very much. Okay, let's jump into some questions. Tommy, I just want to address this from Tommy. He says, pick a position group from each opponent this year to come up with the best and worst all opponent teams. List 2 position groups per team for best, 1 for worst. This is something that we can maybe attack in August. To be honest with you, this is not something that I can attack in June. I cannot tell you. I could give you some cursory, ideas. Ryan can give you some cursory ideas, but we have not dove into the opponents and the position groups and all of that just yet. So we're going to hold off on that question, Tommy. That might be an entire show, to be honest with you, and a really fun show, to be honest, but not one that we're going to tackle today. So I just want to let you know we do see your question, but it's not going to happen today. I don't think we have that kind of knowledge. And look, we are not the channel that is going to give you fake knowledge and pretend like we've been studying this. We haven't, we haven't gotten that far yet. So we will come back to that, though. Tavis McKay says over under 2.5 national championships in the next 10 years. Tavis is thinking very positively after last night, is what it feels like to me.
Well, yes, very positively. And I love it, Tavis. I mean, I'm about as optimistic as any person, I think, on the Irish Breakdown community, but 2.5, I have to take the under there, right? I mean, I would love to just say over. We're going to win every national championship for the foreseeable future, but in my 30 years of life, I have yet to see a national championship at all. So I'm going to say, let's win one, and then we can start talking about this over under. But for now, I'll say under.
I would very much be happy if we set this at 0.5, and then I could take the over fairly confidently, as confident as you can take it, because you're right, there hasn't been one since I was 7 years old. So, and to be perfectly honest with everybody, I don't remember it. So I would love one that I can remember and one that I can be up close and personal with. So I would be happy with one. And I just can't, without completely fanboying it, say over on this. I will say under and be super ecstatic to be wrong. How's that sound? So I would love that to be over, but I can't go that far. Tommy Gunn says, who would you prefer to pettishly play more in a national championship game, Michigan or LSU?
Easy one for me, Vince. Is this an easy one for you?
It's a very easy one for me. Yeah. Yeah.
I would rather Notre Dame beat Brian Kelly and LSU in the national
100%.
championship game, because I don't want to see Michigan in a national championship game. For one, that's my pettiness for the entire program.
That's fair.
And then to continue my pettiness, I would love to beat Brian Kelly on the national stage. That would be fantastic.
I would settle for a bowl game, to be honest with you, but the only problem with it being a national championship game, though, Ryan, is the fact that he got to one.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That he won a Final Four game to get to a national championship game, which is more than he ever did at Notre Dame. So that means he's taken a step in the right direction. But then just to beat the snot out of them and just rub their nose in it and all that, like, that would be very enjoyable for me. There's no question about it. But the fact that he got that far would be so disappointing. It would be so disappointing.
And I know he needs to take one step forward, but then it could be looked at as 2 steps back, Vince, right?
That's
fair. Then you get to the national championship game and the ultimate big game, Brian Kelly comes up short.
Because maybe
his former team.
Because maybe they draw like a sub Power 5 team like a Cincinnati or something like that, and they
Pac-12 team,
right? They get lucky and beat them just based on athletes alone, that kind of a thing. I guess that could be a thing.
Yep.
I just don't want to see him anywhere near a national championship. I'm thinking 3 years and done down there. That would be great. If we're really getting into the petty conversation, that's where I would be. But yeah, Michigan, or see, LSU, even without Brian Kelly, has had success, right? I mean, they've won national championships. So for the program as a whole, that wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. For Michigan, let's just keep them, they had the best year that they've had in decades last year, and they still can't get the top flight recruits, which I personally enjoy. So let's keep them down. I'm okay with that as well. LSU can be good despite Brian Kelly, to be honest with you.
It's fair. Yeah, it's fair.
Okay. Rob Osgood says, hey guys, I know touch base yesterday on the impact of CJ in this year's class and next year's. Who do you think could be in play with him on board, offense or defense?
Well, Rob, this is a great question, one that I actually started writing an article about this
Boom.
morning, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's I don't want to put out all the names because, I want people to read the piece, but I did write an article that had players that I thought were going to be most impacted by the CJ Carr commitment to Notre Dame. And I concluded mostly 2024 guys, but I did include a couple 2024s. The bulk of the article is on pass catchers, to be honest. Like, that's the majority of what it is. So a couple guys, I'll throw out two names. I put Cam Williams, wide receiver, the 2024 class, and then Jack Larson, the tight end out of the Carolinas in the 2024 class as well. They were both on campus for the Irish Invasion. Apparently had a great rapport with CJ during that event. So they were a couple guys that I know are developing good relationships with CJ. So they were two of the big impacted guys, but keep an eye out for that piece when it drops, because I do have a couple more 2024 guys and a couple 2023s that I think could be impacted by CJ as well.
No, I like that. And I, Brian and I talked about the impact, last night, and frankly, he's going to have an impact on both offense and defense and in both years. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. Now, he will have a bigger impact on the guys that are directly involved with him, pass catchers, offensive linemen, things of that nature. There's no question. But a defensive guy would be silly not to pay attention to who the quarterback is in their class. You know what I mean? They're going to want a guy who is elite to take that team places. So a defensive player with his head on his shoulders is going to pay attention to who the quarterback is, right? So it's all important. He's going to have an effect on everybody. There's no question about it. But yeah, I mean, I think your article is probably going to nail it, as your articles usually do. So make sure you guys check that out as soon as it goes live. Shane O'Shea, I know you prefer the current field turf over natural grass. Is it because it always had problems late in the season due to geography? There's nothing like freshly cut natural grass field down south. I'll let you take this one, and I've got answers to this one too, but go ahead.
Okay. I don't know how I feel about the field turf versus natural grass thing, right? Like, I think that there's drawbacks to both.
Sure.
I only played on turf during my college career for a little bit there. I was always a natural grass guy before that.
Sure.
See, I kind of have a love for turf after experiencing fresh cut grass, because I remember, Vince, my last year in high school, I remember it rained every single home game that year, and it's not too much fun, man, when you can't get proper footing, and it's a little tough. So I have a proclivity for field turf, I think, at this point. But yeah, I mean, look, so I'm a baseball coach, right? And we play on natural grass, and the teams up here in northern Indiana that are able to put in field turf have a huge advantage over us, because they can get out on the field anytime they want, frankly, unless it's covered with snow. And that is a huge advantage over any team that has natural grass. And the same can be said for football. Towards the end of the season, obviously I've been attending Notre Dame games since 2004. And at the end of the season, when they had natural grass, it was terrible. And they would try to bring in new grass, down the middle between the hashes, but then it would never really take. And so it would come up real easily. It wouldn't root properly because it wasn't there for very long. And then you'd get big chunks, and it wasn't good. I mean, the surface wasn't good. And then as far as just a simple performance situation, right? Speed guys are going to tell you every time that they'd rather be on turf, because it's got a bounce to it, and you feel faster on field turf. You just do, because it's just got that rubbery kind of bounce to it. And no matter how short you cut the grass or whatever, you're going to feel faster on field turf. Good field turf, mind you, because I've definitely seen some matted down, nasty field turf. My son's high school needs to replace their field turf like yesterday. But the new stuff that colleges are going to be on, that NFL teams are going to be on, man, that stuff is smooth and it's bouncy and it just makes you feel fast. So people are going to prefer field turf. And then you just come down to the maintenance of it. So much easier, especially, the northern schools like Notre Dame. I mean, it's so much easier to take care of grass down south because it's year round. I mean, Arizona literally slides their grass in and out. You know what I mean? You just can't do that up here. So I'm a big proponent of field turf, especially north of the Mason-Dixon line. So
But good question. Really appreciate that.
The big negative is the you get the little bit of the rug burn from the turf, or the turf burn, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's not too much fun, but otherwise I agree completely.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Scott Yerbik says, shout out to my son, a Notre Dame fan as well, won 2 gold medals this week at the USA Games Special Olympics in Orlando. So proud. Dude, that is awesome, man. Congratulations. And he said it was in the long jump and the 4x4 relay, all personal best jumping times as well. Thank you. Yeah, that is freaking great, man. That is
Congrats,
awesome.
Scott.
Congrats, man. Happy dad moment there, and I'm happy for your son as well. There's the Special Olympics are awesome, man. I remember when they had the Special Olympics here in South Bend at Notre Dame Stadium, and I went to the opening ceremonies of that, and that's actually something I'll never forget. And I was a little kid. I can't remember what year it was. I think it was in the 80s, actually. But it was an awesome situation, and that was really, really cool. So congratulations to your son, Scott. John A1, his first question of the day. I'm sure there are many more to follow. He says, do you think Tosh Baker will have a similar path to the field as Josh Lugg? Can he be the starting left tackle in 2024?
2024. Yeah, I'm just thinking. So this is, of course, assuming that Joalt would be an early entry into the draft, right? Because we're assuming that he would be gone after the 2023 season.
So he's out of here after his junior year, which would be, that's saying something for an offensive lineman, but he'll be like a 2.5-year starter and have plenty of film under his belt at that point.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, the assumption here would be, this is why it's tough for me, Vince. Like, Tosh is going to be at that point, excuse me, a redshirt senior, right? Because he's going to be a redshirt sophomore this year. So he would be a redshirt senior at that point, a 5th-year senior. So I guess the big question for me, John, is one, we're projecting that Joe continues his trajectory. He's an early entrant. But then we're also projecting that a player is going to stay 5 years as a, 4 years as a backup.
Right.
So that's where it gets like a little tough for me. I hope so, because I really am a believer in Tosh's talent. I do think with Harry Hiestand coaching him, he could be a really good starting offensive tackle in the college level. The unfortunate thing for him is that he wasn't developed well early, and now he's got Blake Fisher and Joe Alt in front of him playing offensive tackle. So I hope so. It's just a question of how patient is Tosh, because I mean Tosh is a really talented player. You got to think that he wants to play, obviously. So that's my only drawback.
He's a prime example of somebody who could jump in the portal. I mean, he just is. And right now, his path to the field is blocked for the next 2 years minimum, right? Because they can't, Alt and Fisher can't leave for another 2 years. They don't have a choice. They have to stick around. Not that anybody would tell them to leave after 1 year, full year of starting, but they have to stick around. So Tosh Baker's path to the field is 100% blocked unless he wants to move inside, and he's not an interior player. He's a tackle. So yeah, he's going to have some tough decisions to make, and I'm sure that he's already having those discussions with people, but also staying under the tutelage of Harry Hiestand is only going to help him as well. But does he want to stick around for 2 years? That's the big question, I think. So
it's a tough one. I mean, because there's obviously big positives to staying, and there's, I'm sure he's a competitive kid, so I'm sure he wants to play football. But it's also you're learning from the best offensive line coach in college football, and there's some backlog to your development early on in your career. It's a really tough question, John. Yeah. I kind of lean to the fact of I don't want to predict anybody to transfer, but I just don't know if him sitting that long is realistic. I'll just leave it at that, I guess.
Yeah, I got you. Another one from John. He says, where would you rank Christian Hamilton as a fit for Notre Dame? Current needs among the other 23 wide receiver targets.
I think he's paramount, John. I really do. I know they're getting in a little later. They offered him relatively long ago, but he is not a player that they've really pushed for until Rodney Gallagher went off the board and committed to West Virginia. The issue that Notre Dame had as soon as Rodney committed elsewhere is that you have Braylon James, who's an outside receiver. I think he could do stuff to the field. He can do stuff to the boundary, but he is primarily an outside receiver. Jaden Greathouse is on the board. Notre Dame feels good where they are in that one. But again, he's more of a outside receiver that maybe could do some big slot stuff. For the most part, he's going to stay on the outside. Ronan Hannafin is a 6'3" wide receiver who's also going to be more of an outside receiver. And then Rico Flores is about a 6'1", 190-pound guy who can do some inside-outside, but he's not a pure slot either, right? So the question is, who is the pure slot type in the class? Christian Hamilton makes a lot of sense because he does a lot of the same things Ronnie Gallagher does, and he wins in similar ways, kind of as a slot receiver. So I think he's very important. I think you need to get at least 2 of the 3 I mentioned before. You need to get at least 2 of Jaden Greathouse, Ronan Hannafin, and Rico Flores. You need to get at least 2 of those, and then and hopefully you can get a Christian Hamilton if you're Notre Dame, because that's the true slot type in this class.
Right. Good call. Good call. Tommy Guns has another question. He says, how much can the quarterback room have an influence on recruiting Coach Reese back to Notre Dame, assuming he gets very considerable but not no-brainer offers after this year?
I mean, I think the last part of that's the biggest part for me, right, Vince? Is like if it's not a no-brainer, like I don't want to call it a dream job, but a obvious step up, I don't think that it's going to be much of a conversation if he's happy with how the program is trending and how the quarterback position is trending. So I think it can be huge, Tommy. I think because we've talked about this, right? It is no secret that Coach Reese loves CJ Carr. Like, he is excited about what CJ Carr can do at Notre Dame. Will he be here the whole time to see that one through? That's a question. But I do think that it assuming in this hypothetical that it's not a absolute upgrade or it's not the perfect opportunity for him to leave, he's only 29 years old. I don't think he's going to jump just to jump, right? Like, I think it's going to be a well thought out, because that's what Tommy Reese is. He's a very smart, articulate guy. So he's not going to just jump to jump. So I think it could help the cause to keep Tommy Reese longer. It just really is very dependent on what the job offers are that are on the table potentially.
Because I don't see him. Because you got to remember, being offensive coordinator at Notre Dame is a pretty good job, right? I think we can all agree on that. And so I don't see him taking an offensive coordinator job at another college. I don't see that being the case. Offensive coordinator for an NFL team, that would be something I think he would consider, and then I don't know what his, hopes and dreams are as far as being a head coach at the college level, or if that's even part of the conversation, right? Because, if he gets a head coach offer, it's going to be probably a group of 5 team, I would imagine, or maybe a MAC school, that kind of an offer, I would imagine, if that offer is out there. I just don't see the magnitude of offers coming after 1 year of truly being at the helm of the offense. Maybe. I mean, I'm sure he's going to get conversations. There's going to be phone calls. There's going to be somebody that's going to reach out and gauge interest, right? But if he doesn't want to be the head coach at a non-Power 5 school, right, then I think those conversations are going to fall on deaf ears, right? So I still think, and this is just me talking, this is not a conversation that I've had with Tommy or anybody else that knows Tommy, it feels like the NFL is kind of his bullseye, right? So an offensive coordinator job for an NFL team, I think that is a legit conversation starter. I think there's people out there that would argue that the Notre Dame offensive coordinator job is better, to be honest. So you'd have to weigh the team, you'd have to weigh the situation. There's a lot of different things. And of course, the success or not success of the quarterback room at Notre Dame is going to factor into that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well said, Vince. It's really well said. I definitely agree that I think the long term for Tommy is much more NFL than college. Like, that's just my general sense. Yeah. Again, that's not like inside information. That's just kind of reading the tea leaves type of thing. And he has also he has literally been in the NFL already, right? Like, he has that background. So I don't know, just reading between the tea leaves on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all we're doing. Like, again, that's not firsthand information. It's not like, Tommy, the 3 of us went out and had dinner last night and he talked about his future goals. Like, that did not occur. So, we are reading the tea leaves on this one. So here's a kind of a fun one. Would you rather Phil Jurkovec or Tyler Buckner?
Right now it's Tyler Buckner because he has more years of eligibility and he is coming and he's been a year in the offense now, right? Like, if you had Phil, you're going to get Phil for 1 year, right? And he's been in a different situation and he's been a little bit injured at times. And I don't know. I think I would rather just take the younger, more unknown commodity, because I think that the long term is what I'm striving for more than the short term. If you ask me though, like, if I had to win 1 game in 2022, who would I rather have? I think that's a much more like realistic conversation to, maybe going Phil over Tyler.
And the answer might change 6 games into the season for Notre Dame too. You know what I mean? I just don't. We have a lot of evidence of Phil playing at the D1 level as the guy, right? We have more evidence of that. We've seen it at Boston College. We've seen it. We don't have as much. We don't have any evidence of Tyler Buchner being the guy at a Power 5 school. We don't have that now. If you ask me this question in the middle of October. Because if you ask me that now, I'm going to take Phil because it's a bird in the hand kind of a thing. You know, it's the evidence that I have. I know what I'm getting, right? There's still question marks about what Tyler Buchner is going to bring to the table when he's the guy. 6 games into the season, maybe that decision changes, you know, once we see what he can do at the helm of Notre Dame. So it's a really good question. They're similar players in certain regards, and then they're very different players in other regards. So it's a really, really good question.
Well, Vince, can I pull this one up?
Please.
99 Problems with BK1 just said, if you took them both at the same stage of their college careers, would you prefer Phil J or Tyler B? So that's a more realistic question. 99 Problems. I like that one a lot. But and I'm going to be completely honest about this one. I have a little bit of a bias towards size of quarterback usually. Okay, so I would probably pick Phil, but it wouldn't be a slam dunk taking Phil, right? Like it would be a very realistic conversation because Tyler's a more dynamic runner. I think he's more accurate than Phil. Phil's got a stronger arm. He's a little more dense in the pocket. He's a more physically imposing type of player. My bias would probably make me take Phil, but I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to it.
That's interesting because my bias is more toward a dual threat. And I think that Tyler is more of a within the system dual threat quarterback as opposed to Phil. Phil is really good at getting out of messes and kind of free forming and doing it in a smart way, right? I think he's really, really good at that, and he's really, really good with his legs. But I like Tyler more in the read option game within the system, if that makes sense. Like I think he's a better runner in that regard than Phil is. But again, I think we're splitting hairs, to be honest with you. And you know, that's just kind of where I'm at with that particular comment. And let's see here. Let's try this. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. That was weird.
Well, it's funny because I'm going over, like my my answer, and I'm like, wow, I don't know what Ryan's thinking about what I have to say because he's just not even moving.
It was very profound. I didn't even hear it, but it was very profound. Sorry about that.
Long story short, I took Tyler because I think he's more structured within the running game than Phil is. Like Phil, he runs the ball really, really well, but more kind of freestyle, freelance running the ball. You know what I mean? I think Tyler fits. I like a dual threat a little bit more. Like you like a big quarterback. I like somebody that's a little bit more dual threat within the framework of the offense.
Right.
But again, we're splitting hairs. So anyway, very good question though. 99 Problems. Really like that one a lot. Utah Irish. We'll stay with the quarterbacks here. How many games will Tyler Buchner lead the team in rushing? My bold prediction is 4, mostly because of the deep running back room and the fact that he is dynamic.
Vince, is my volume still okay? I saw somebody said that it was a little funky.
I got
in the chat. Okay,
I got
perfect.
you. Yep,
just making sure. It's a tough one. Game by game, it could be very different, right?
Yeah.
I'll say I'll say 2 to be safe, right? Because I do think that there's going to be a couple games where Tyler just goes a little bit crazy, and we've talked about that the running back room is going to be mixed and matched a little bit. Like I don't know if we're going to see one guy get the bulk of the carries. You're going to see Estime and Diggs hopefully if he's back from the injury in a good place, and Chris Tyree and maybe Jadarian Price. Like you're going to see a mix and match of running backs. So I'll say maybe 2 games you get a Tyler Buchner just having a 100+ yard performance, and he's the leading rusher for Notre Dame.
Yeah, 4 is a big number. And I only say that because I would not be surprised if he hit that number, to be honest with you, because of everything that you just said and the fact that who's going to be that bell cow back? I don't know the answer to that. If Kyron Williams was coming back this year, I'd say way under. Like that's not even a possibility because they're going to feed Kyron Williams. I don't know who that back is. I don't know who they're going to feed. And it's going to be whoever's hot. And that could vary game to game. But does that mean that Tyler Buchner is going to be the leader then? Or is it going to be whoever's hot? Right. So it just really depends on how they want to go about it. And I don't know the answer to that. So I will say under, just because I feel like some of these games that Notre Dame has, he's going to be handing off a lot, just because of the skill differential and all of that. So I'm going to say under, but it would not surprise me if it ended up being 4. That's a bold prediction for a good reason. So
what if I said it for you, Vince? A new over under at 2.5.
I knew you were going to say 2.5. So. I would say that it would be a bold prediction as well, but I would take the over.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I would take the over. I know. And it's not that far away for 4. So, but yeah, I would take the over. I think there will be games where he just kind of goes nutty and he'll break one. If he breaks a 60-yard run, and then has a couple of, 5s, 7s, 4s, and that adds up pretty quickly, right? So he could get to 100 yards pretty easily, and then what's left for everybody else, right? So I'll take the over 2.5. What about you?
I think I'm going to go under because I said I thought it was going to be 2, right? So
stick with your guns. I like that.
And I don't think it's pessimistic at all because I honestly don't think that you want Tyler Buchner to be your leading rusher that often, right? Like there's going to be some games where it's a little bit of an anomaly type of thing, but Tyler Buchner's legs are a weapon and he's an extension of the run game, but in the purest form, you want Estime and Chris Tyree to be the guys, right? Like you want them to be able to pace the run game. Like you want Tyler to have to concentrate on being the best passer possible and then using his legs when you need him type of thing. So just
that's a good point.
I think it's actually more optimistic than pessimistic to think that it will be a lower number. That's just me.
Because it's a really good point. I like that. That's a really good point because if his numbers are lower, that means the running backs are having, they're doing well and they're protecting Tyler to a degree, right? Because there's only so many times that you would want to run your starting quarterback, right? I mean, you got to be smart about it too. So this isn't high school ball. So you got to be smart. This is a very interesting question. I'm very interested to hear your take on this one from John. He says, what makes a head coach a good game day coach?
Well, I mean, it's the preparation to begin with, right? Like you need to have a thorough game plan where you're comfortable on every side of the ball. And that's offense, defense, and special teams. And you have to trust the people that are putting players into position. So most head coaches don't call an offense or a defense anymore. There are some that still do, like a Ryan Day, for instance, right? But you need to have preparation to come out of the gate fast, right? Like that's a big thing for game day approach. And then the biggest thing for coaching is adjustments, and that's not just adjustments at halftime, not just adjustments during quarters. Like you need to be able to spot stuff very quickly. And that might be play by play, that might be drive by drive, series by series, like whatever it is. You need to have that in you. So I think the adjustment factor, I think the preparation factor, and I think the motivation factor, right? Like there's going to be guys that are not playing a ton on the sideline. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. Being able to keep like an even keel feel for your team throughout a game, I think is big for it too.
I like that last point a lot as far as having a feel for your team and things of that nature, because that's going to be important. Towards the end of the game, if you've got to decide whether you're going to go for it on 4th down, or do you have faith in your offense? Do you have faith in your defense? All of those different things. I think you got to be dialed in to who your team is, what they're capable of, and that changes game to game and year to year, frankly. And a good head coach has that capability and that knowledge of their team. So having a finger on the pulse of your team, I think, is super, super important. And I would also say having a finger on the pulse of your coaching staff too, understanding kind of where they're coming from with some of the decisions that they're making and being comfortable with those decisions, right? I mean, Marcus Freeman's a defensive guy, right? He doesn't know the offensive side of the ball. He's learning the offensive side of the ball. It's one of the reasons he wanted Tommy Rees to stick around and be on his staff. But in a game day situation, let's see how much he trusts Tommy Rees, right? Or let's see how much Tommy Rees trusts Marcus Freeman. Like there's going to be, what's that relationship look like when the ball is in Notre Dame's hands? What's that decision-making like? So I think having your finger on the pulse of the team as well as the coaching staff is hugely important, and trusting what decisions that your coaches are going to make is really, really important. Don't try to micromanage everything. That's not a good head coach. You know what I mean? You can somewhat micromanage during the week, but once the game hits, you got to let your guys do their thing. And that includes the coaching staff, right? And you make the big decisions, whether to go for it on forward, the punt, all those different things. We can onside kick it or, whatever, but you got to trust your guys. And if you don't trust your guys, then that's on you because you hired them,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Recruiting question from Notre Dame 2164. I haven't actually heard this name in a little while. Has anything changed with Carnell Tate? He is set to make a decision soon. And I was just wondering if he had thought about Notre Dame more than he had been.
Carnell Tate is not going to Notre Dame, folks. I'm sorry to break this to everyone. I think if you're on the message board, you kind of get this. And I'm not saying this like anything disrespectfully at all. They're in Carnell Tate's top 3. I know that was a talking point on the message board earlier. There are outside factors other than just liking a school and liking a coaching staff that are in play in Carnell Tate's recruitment. And I think that's all we need to say about it, right? It's the realistic wide receiver targets that are still on the board. Braylon James, who is already committed, like I said before, Ronan Hannafin, Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, Christian Hamilton are the most likely guys on the board right now. Carnell Tate, Notre Dame's, still in contact
from
time to time, but it's just not going to happen if we're being very honest.
Yeah, look, he's still a top flight wide receiver. You still got to be, recruiting him. I mean, you can't just quit. I mean, I still appreciate that, but yeah, realistically, it's just not going to happen. John has another question. The NCAA seems to be making decisions hurting player development in major sports. Do you see the NFL partnering with the XFL, USFL as an intermediate level source like the NBA's G League to get young talent ready?
John, do I wish that it would happen? Yes, I wish that it would happen. I wish there would be an alternative league that was a little bit like a developmental league, but I just don't think it's ever going to happen because you just mentioned the NCAA. The NCAA is a developmental league for football. It's not like there's a one and done rule where you come out and then you have, a in between developmental league. Like players have to stay for 3 years in college and they're coming and they're developed for the NFL, right? So the NFL doesn't have to partner, which means put up money so that these leagues like the XFL and the USFL exist to begin with. And they're not going to do that because the NCAA already is a thing. Like that's their developmental league right now. So if that ever happened, I think it's because they changed the eligibility rule for who can go into the NFL draft. And I think there's a lot more behind the scenes than just wanting a developmental league. Would I love it? Yes, I would 100% love it because I love football and I would love one of those leagues to be successful. The USFL is an okay product. I think the XFL is actually going to be a decent product, but I just don't think the NFL is going to worry about wanting a developmental league. I don't think that's in the cards for them.
Well, and I had heard people talk about, I think it was the USFL and wanting the NFL basically wanting to see if they were going to be successful and then maybe buying into it, later on at a later date kind of a thing. And like they're keeping their eye on it sort of situation, which I think is smart of the NFL to at least keep tabs on this thing, because I do think that it would be fun or great to have more football, and to have it under the umbrella of the NFL obviously means that it would be financially stable, which is something that we know that these other leagues struggle with. And that's why they pretty much fold most of the time is the financial piece of it. But
yeah,
I would like it. It's going to need to be done correctly, right? I mean, is each team going to have, a minor league affiliate? What's that going to look like? What's the financial agreement from the NFL? I don't know. I like the idea. I like the idea of it. I just don't know that it's realistic with the way things go right now and
right.
facilities and timing and all of those different things. So it would be great.
I just think there has to be stay power with it, right? Like I am interested to see the XFL layer to it because The Rock is running that, right? Dwayne Johnson. And obviously that's going to be well funded. That's not going to go bankrupt in a year, right? Like in theory. So that one could have stay power if it's a good product. We'll see. But I mean, we've seen the NFL Europe thing in the past already, right? Like it's literally been a thing that people have tried. It wasn't very successful. And then these leagues have just kind of been coming and going, like the AAF and the USFL. And some of it is outside factors that is out of their control. But until a league shows that they have stay power, I don't even think it's something that they consider.
Right. Exactly. But I like the fact that they're keeping an eye on these other leagues just to see if it's a possibility. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that is at least smart about it. Brandon K says, in terms of archetypes, using the big words, I like that, of receivers, what do we think, or what do you think makes up the ideal composition of a room? More speed guys, more possession guys? My answer is yes. I mean, you that's the best part about a wide receiver room is you need all of that. You need
Right.
speed guys, you need possession guys, you need all run after the catch guys, all of that stuff. You need, I think, of all the rooms, I think the varying skill sets are the most in the wide receiver room off the top of my head. I mean, obviously you're going to have varying skill sets at offensive line and maybe at linebacker, but really you could have 6'6", 6'5" guys. You could have a 5'8" guy. You could have a guy that runs a 4'7", but has, is a big, great hands guy that runs a 4'4". I mean, there's a million different types of receivers, and you can be successful with all of those. I mean, shoot, look at Hunter Renfrow. He just signed a massive contract with the Raiders, and he looks like the guy that's barbecuing next door. You know what I mean? Like, so you can have all kinds of receivers that can have all kinds of success. I think the answer is yes to both of those questions.
I think it is too. I mean, if we're getting a little more specific on the actual positions, because you're right, it's not a one size fits all type of thing. But I mean, typically you would think boundary receiver, you need tall, lengthy, has the physicality, and has speed, right? Like that's a guy that can take the top off the defense, but also can play physical, back shoulder stuff, like all that type of stuff, right? Like that's your boundary receiver. Your field receiver, your outside receiver all the way to the field. I'm thinking more flexible route runner. I want height as well. I would still like 6'1" and a half, 6'2" type of guy, but I need him to be a little more fluid, a little more quickness to his game than just pure vertical speed. But vertical speed also helps at that position. And then slot, this would typically be your Wes Welker,
right?
Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola types. Like that's what the idea. Golden Tates, like those 5'10" quick water bug route runners, yak guys. You would think about that, but now the times are changing a little bit. Like we're seeing bigger bodies now go into the slot a lot too, right? So I don't think that you just need a single type of slot. I think that it can be a bigger body type of big slot, even a de facto tight end, kind of like an H or a flex tight end, whatever you want to call them. So I don't think there's a actual style, but I agree, Vince. I mean, my biggest thing is like, I would love speed at every single one of those spots. That's a huge bonus at all the times, but it doesn't really matter because I think possession guys, I think there's like a misnomer with possession. Possession, I think people think are guys that are just slow and they can't make things after the catch. But possession also means that you catch the ball consistently, right? Yeah. So like that's why you want that. Like you want guys that know how to use their body, that consistently catch the ball, work through traffic, all those types of things. So I always want speed, but there are different body types you usually consider for different alignments.
Very good, sir. Completely agree with all that. Thank you for going into more in depth because I think that's what Brandon was probably looking for. All right. John, I think this might actually be, you know what? I'm going to save this one for Brian. I'm going to go ahead and star that one, asking about what scheme is best for the recruited talent. I think the three of us could have some fun with that one. So I will save that one for when Brian comes on in a few minutes. But I think that is a really good one. Here's a good recruiting question for you. From Rob Osgood, this weekend with so many players coming in and next will be the same as well. How does the coaching staff handle everyone? Separate or keep them in a group or a combination of the two?
It's everything, Rob. I mean, you're going to get those kids together in a group. You're going to sit them down for lunch. You're going to talk to them in various position groups, various head coaches. I mean, not various head coaches. Marcus Freeman's going to be included in some of these groups, obviously. But there's going to be adequate one-on-one time, right? Like you want a guy like a Monroe Freeling to be able to sit down with Harry Heastand and really talk ball and talk film and do all that type of stuff. And then you're also going to get them like him with Sam Pendleton and Sullivan Absher as the offensive line group. So it's definitely a combination. Notre Dame's, I mean, they've been doing a great job, I think, mixing and matching. I mean, even when you think to the Blue Gold game, when they brought in all the alumni, like they had, just kind of like a big events where they could talk to different alumni that are walking around and doing all that type of stuff. So the answer is everything. Like you want it to be a multifaceted thing. You don't want it to be one thing because the biggest thing with this recruiting type of stuff is players don't always react the same to different things, right? Like some people like to be in bigger groups. Some people like to be in small groups. Some people like to be in one-on-one situations. So you mix and match so it appeals to every different type of recruit.
Yep. That's a really well put statement, because you got to know the kid, like for example, and I already forget who it was, but the kid that was coming into the airport, last night or this morning or whatever.
Preston Zinter. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They came and they're like grinding in front of him with the jukebox and all of that. Like, some kids are going to really enjoy that. Some kids, not so much. You know what I mean?
Vince, how much would a super chat cost you to have to reenact that right now?
I need the golden jukebox though, man.
Yeah, true.
A cowboy hat, apparently. I just like, if I was a recruit, that would not do it for me. Like, I would not enjoy that in any way, shape, or form. But Preston seemed to enjoy it. So, okay. I mean, again, know your audience. That's really important. And Notre Dame generally knows their audience. And that continues on throughout the weekend, right? I mean, do you want a kid to vibe with Marcus Freeman more? Like, is that what he's looking for? Well, you're going to make sure he gets a one-on-one in Coach Freeman's office. You know what I mean? Yep. Is he vibing with his position coach more? Well, you can make sure he gets a one-on-one with his position coach. Is he vibing with the other recruits? Does that matter to him? You know what I mean? So that's the whole point of building that foundation all the way up to these visits, right? So
yeah,
I have a lot of faith in Notre Dame's recruiting. So they're going to knock it out of the park. There's no way. Like, if I was a recruit, like, I just want to ride around on the stretch golf cart, that they've got, like, pimp me around campus. You know what I mean? Show me off to people. Like, that would be fun. That kind of a thing. But.
And just to add some context, Ethan O'Connor said that Ronan Hannafin was also in that video. Ethan, good call. Preston was the one that posted it, which is why we referenced that. But yeah, you're correct. Ronan Hannafin is also a Massachusetts guy, so he was in the video as well. He was the one that did not seem to be as intense on dancing as Preston, but yes, he was there.
So yeah, it is what it is. Hulk's strongest aloha IB Nation. I'm assuming that means he is in Hawaii. So cheers to you, sir. Do you guys think the transfer portal is important for any team, or just the teams who don't recruit well?
It can serve different functions for different teams, which is why it's a hard question for me to answer. Like, there's a Michigan State went into last year. The previous year, they were not a very good football team, and they went into the portal and they hit it as hard as anybody. Like, them in Western Kentucky, I think, were the two highest as far as transfer portal kids in that year. And they got guys like Kenneth Walker, who ended up being a Heisman finalist, at running back for Michigan State. So for Michigan State, I don't want to call it desperation, but they were trying to fill out a roster with impact players, right? For a team like, I mean, if Notre Dame, we talk about the wide receiver, if there's a guy in the portal type of thing, if Notre Dame took a wide receiver from the portal, it's more for depth pieces, right? And there's some teams that are looking more for the depth piece aspect to it. Some are looking for impact players. So I don't think that I don't think it's an impact really on recruiting. I think it's just more, there's so many moving parts now. Players leaving for early for the NFL, going on their career, choosing to just go into a different career and kind of ending their careers early, or
injuries,
injuries, yeah. Right? Yeah, transferring just in general. I mean, because you need to, if you're gonna have a bunch of kids transferring, you need to replenish that somehow, right? So
and that's the biggest thing. It's roster replenishment, right? I mean, and it's for all the reasons that you just gave is why your roster is different than what you projected it to be when you have brought in that recruiting class. Okay, well, I'm bringing in 4 linebackers. Well, those guys are going to be here for the next 4 years. So, that affects the next year's recruiting, et cetera, and the numbers and all of that. Well, if guys leave or they get injured or whatever, for whatever reason, they're not on your roster anymore, the quick fix now, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the quick fix is to go through the transfer portal. You've got to replenish that roster. When in the past, you had to replenish those spots through recruiting, and you're bringing in an 18-year-old. Well, now you can bring in a 21-year-old who's game ready, essentially, right? And so it just changes things. And then you also see it with USC, for example, a new coach. Well, he flushed half his roster. He's got to replace half the roster, right? And you do that through the transfer portal. So I wouldn't say it's as cut and dry as teams that can't recruit versus teams that can recruit. I just think teams are using it differently. Notre Dame is not using it the same way as USC. USC isn't using it the same as other schools, so it's just, it's a school by school thing. And the fact that you can be immediately eligible allows you to pretty much do whatever you want.
It's also an extension of recruiting when you really think about it too. I mean, you are replenishing your roster. I mean, transfers are basically recruiting at this point. They're getting recruiting pitches just like recruits are getting recruited pitches. Like it's happening that way. So I almost would couple them together, sort of. But I mean, to answer the question, Hulk strongest, I do think that there's different programs that use it differently, and I don't think it's always because they're good or bad at recruiting. I think it's just the world we live in now.
Absolutely. Rob has an interesting question here. He says, in yesterday's show, the way Tyler Buchner plays this year will be a major recruiting tool. What does he need to show? 3,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, or just the fact that Notre Dame is opening up the playbook?
I think it's a mixture. I mean, I think you definitely want production to follow good quarterback play, right? Like you want that. You don't want Tyler Buchner to be a de facto. I mean, because like there's a world where Tyler Buchner, and I'm not saying that this is a likely world, but what if they're a really good team, but they're a run-heavy team, and he throws for 2,500 yards, but he's just a really efficient passer, but he just doesn't have a high volume? That's not attractive to everyone. Like there's going to be some recruits that are like, I want to throw the ball more than they are now, but I think that that's not going to be the case for Tyler Buchner because I think they are going to open up the offense a little bit. So I think it's going to be more, because this is another big recruiting pitch, right? Is the fact that when quarterbacks so when CJ Carr sat down with Tommy Rees, it's not looking at the raw stats, right? It's not like, oh, Jack Cohn threw for 3,100 yards. Like you could throw for 4,000. I mean, it may be for some recruits, but they're watching film together. They're showing this is how we attack the passing game. This is how you're going to be successful in the passing game. So I don't think it's I think there's context that gets lost in just looking at like target stats, right? So I think it's a little bit of a mixture. But ultimately, I think it's a big sell that Tommy Rees showed down the stretch of the season, and especially in the Oklahoma State game, that he's willing to let a quarterback loose, right? Like, I think that is a big sell for a recruit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's more the playbook for me. I mean, look, the kid can't go out and throw for 2,000 yards and 10 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. That can't happen, right? I mean, there has to be some success in the numeric department, but at the same time, I think it's more about what the playbook looks like and what you're able to do and how you're going about it. Because, look, a really good recruiting pitch is also, hey, this is what we're trying to do. The kid we got right now can't do it. We think you can do it. That's also a recruiting pitch. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but I'm saying that's a way to go about it. You know what I mean? And like, this is what we want to do, but we can't do it unless you come. You know, that's a thing. So it's all of the above, frankly. But I would probably push more towards the playbook than I would the numbers. Hulk Strongest back. He says, is there any evidence from what you guys have seen this past spring that the team will take a step back and lose 5 games?
I'd be very surprised.
Yeah.
They just looked very competitive. I think that's kind of been ingrained in them with this new staff. And I think that they have a lot of speed on this team. So with better coaching around them, being able to, turn all that potential into production, I would be very surprised. I mean, I said this before. I think 10-2, 9-3 is their absolute floor. Like I still think I think they could win 11 games next year. So yeah, I would be very surprised if it was 5 losses.
I heard some people talking the other day about what the ceiling and what the floor is for Notre Dame this year from a record standpoint, right? And when you talk about this stuff, you have to assume no catastrophic injuries, all of that kind of stuff. So everybody's healthy-ish, right? I mean, it's still a football season, right? But nobody's out for the season, that kind of stuff. I think the absolute floor is 9-3, and I would venture to almost say 10-2. But then, the ceiling, I mean, how can you not put the ceiling at 12-0? I can't. That's the ceiling, obviously. I'm not predicting them to be 12-0 by any stretch of the imagination, but that has to be the ceiling. I was hearing people say, well, the ceiling's 11-1, so you're guaranteed a loss in there someplace. I don't know that you can guarantee a loss. Now, am I picking Notre Dame to beat Ohio State on June 10th? No, I'm not. But I'm not going to guarantee they lose either. You know what I mean? So I think you have to hold that into accountability. So I'm a 12-0 and then like a 9-3 in that window. And if it's anything outside of the 9-3, if it's anything below that, something drastically bad has happened to this team. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Agree.
John A1 says, how many true freshmen will start on the defensive line in 23? So we're talking about the 23 class. How many of them are going to start? If Riley Mills breaks out and gets draft interest, Notre Dame may be looking at replacing 3 to 4 starters on the line.
It's a good question, John. I would say, all right, so we're quantifying start. We'll start. So they could just start one football game at lowest, right? So I think the easiest path is Keon Keeley. We've talked about that before because Isaiah Foskey is moving off to the NFL after this year. So you're going to have an opening at the Vipers position, which, okay, it's a pretty easy one to make. I think there's obviously going to be some guys that are competing for that spot, but I would say it's a safe assumption to think that Keon Keeley is going to come in and play a lot of football during his first year. So he's one. Just rolling through it. Strong side defense. John, I struggle a little bit because I've talked to Brian about this a little bit on the podcast before. Riley Mills has to have like a crazy breakout year to leave, right? Like I don't envision him leaving early. I think he's more of a 4-year player, not a 3-year player, right? So
agreed.
Strong side defensive end, then that's going to limit if he is back, it's going to limit the reps for a Brennan Vernon or a Jason Moore potentially. I think one other guy is going to start maybe a couple games at 3 tech. Like I'll give the 3 tech the spot with Jason Adamalolo moving on. So whether that is Jason Moore coming in heavier than he is right now and playing some 3 tech, or it's a Boubacar Traore or Devin Houston, whoever it ends up being, then I'll say that there's 2 freshman defensive linemen that start at least one football game in 2023. But I think there's only one that has like a clear path to it right now.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I like that. John Murray says, how good will the safety play be this year, and who do you think will be included in the rotation? Well, we can start with Joseph because definitely going to be in the rotation, and I think he's going to be really, really good. So that's a great replacement for an All-American for an All-American, so that's good. I think Ramon Henderson is I don't want to pencil him in as the starter across from him, but that's the way it looked going out of last year. A lot of things can change in the offseason, but I think you have to expect that he's obviously going to be up there in the rotation. I still think DJ Brown's going to be in the rotation. Mm-hmm. I think Xavier Watts is going to be in the rotation, and I think Houston Griffith's going to be in the rotation. Now, what quantifies the rotation? You know what I mean?
Right.
4 guys. So if it's 4, because I think I just named 5 guys, right? So I think one of those 5 is going to be out of the mix somehow. And
the only absolute, in my opinion, is Brandon Joseph, which you mentioned, right? Like he's going to play a lot of football. I think all the others have an opportunity. I also do defer to the fact that the flashes I've seen of Ramon Henderson would probably win out for me.
Sure.
But there's still going to be some inconsistencies to his game. We saw in the spring game, there's still things that need to, because I think that a lot of people are excited about him, which I am as well, but it's also, he hasn't been playing safety very long, right? Like he's still a little rough around the edges in that regard, but I'll say those are the starters. And then we have some form of DJ Brown, Xavier Watts backing up, Houston Griffith. I don't know what the rotation is going to look behind him. I guess I'll just predict that it's going to be Joseph Henderson as the main bulk, at least the most.
And I think volume. That's fair. It's a weird world for me to think that Houston Griffith might be on the outside looking in, but he might be. It might be that way. We'll know more when we can watch this team practice in August. That's for sure. So I don't think we're really going to get an answer to that until then, to be honest with you. So stay tuned, John. Stay tuned for that. All right, Jacob Hayden. Hey, Brian, Vince, and maybe Ryan. We're going to take the maybe out, and Ryan. When it comes to QB's arm strength, what goes into it? I've seen small, short guys outthrow tall, well-built guys before, and just curious what gives someone a cannon.
It's a great question. It's different for everyone, Jacob. I'd say more often than not, taller guys are going to have longer levers. So the more torque you have on a ball, it's like a javelin thrower, right? The more of whip that you have, that's going to be arm strength is going to be included in that. And then the other big thing is core and lower body strength, right? Like having a good strong base. Those are things that are going to be able to get great whip to the football. Because like you said, I mean, Kyler Murray has one of the stronger arms in the NFL right now. He is 5'10", but then there's Josh Allen, that's a 6'5" that has a hose. They're completely different body types. The differences are Kyler Murray has crazy arm speed and he has a strong lower base. And then Josh Allen has that long whip and also a strong lower base, right? So they're different factors, but I would say more than anything, you need to have a strong lower half, you need to have a strong core, and you need to have some type of arm speed, whether that's because of your whip or it's because just your natural arm speed.
Absolutely. You said it. I was going to start talking about footwork and lower body and things like that. So if we're talking about, for example, CJ Carr, right? We talked about last night that he needs a little bit more arm strength when it comes to the long ball, right? Well, I think a lot of that has to do, he's got really, really good footwork. I just think he needs to follow through with it just a little bit more. But again, that comes with he's a sophomore. Like that, he's going to get there. And then also just natural maturity and body growth and strength because he's got real skinny legs right now. You know,
180. He's 185 pounds soaking wet right now.
Exactly.
Like
he needs to throw a couple bags of nickel in his pockets. You know what I mean? Like he is a skinny dude. So, you know, again, it's the full body. It's not just what you got on your shoulder that people need to understand. It's a lot of lower body helps with arm strength. Hulk Strongest, if the light turns on for Botelho, what kind of player can he be?
Really good.
It's good.
Welcome.
Good time to pop in.
and I mean, let's be honest. With Botelho, it needs to turn on not only on the field but off the field. It's a combination light bulb for him. But if it does, he could be really, really good. He's a real athletic dude. There's no question about that.
For any college football fans, I would compare it a little bit to Brian. Do you remember Zach Bond that played at Wisconsin? Yeah, he was kind of your hybrid on-ball Sam, off-ball Sam, right? Like he can play in space. He can also do things as a pass rusher. His last year, he was phenomenal. I mean, he had like double-digit sacks. And I'm not saying that Botelho is going to be a double-digit sack guy, but what I'm saying is the versatility he has as kind of that versatile Sam, I think is the impact that he can have.
I think for me, for Botelho, is if he can be as good as he wants to be. And that's what it boils down to. If he wants to be a 10-plus sack guy, Ryan, when Isaiah Foskey leaves, he can.
Yeah.
If he wants to be a rover, he can. If he wants to be a Will, a Mike, like you said, the off-ball Sam role, a hybrid role, which I think would be the best one where he's doing a lot of different things you know it's going to be, he can. The question with Jordan Botelho has never been talent. It's always been he's got to stay focused and stay locked in on doing things the right way on and off the field. And if the staff can get that out of him, he's going to be really good. There's no doubt about it. So the talent is certainly there.
Brian, you want to head to some of those starred questions?
Yeah, we can. So we're seeing a bunch of super chats piling in too. So
that's awesome.
I'm
at top. I'm at like 12:54. So that's as far.
Guys are an hour and 8 minutes into the show, and we still haven't got to the start time with questions.
I know. What can I say?
We're in a catch-22 because we need to start the show early enough to let people know that we're doing it. But then it started so early that it's like, we don't get to the
got some good ones today too, man.
Yeah. Let's first of all, Lee Gannon, my man, thank you for the super chat.
Thanks, Lee.
Appreciate you very, very, very much. Chief Brody with a super chat. Did you guys pull this one up yet?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
How great was it seeing Lloyd Carr wearing a Notre Dame hat? You just know how that was a gut punch to many a Skunk Bear fan across the country.
I enjoyed it.
It was, but I'm trying to not look at it like that because I look at it like that was a grandpa celebrating his grandson.
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right. And I'm trying not to be that petty Notre Dame fan, but it's super hard.
Both though, can it? Can it be both? Even if it's unintentional, can it be both?
I have a great picture of my daughter Juliet as the background on my phone. I almost made that one my background instead.
Nice.
As much as I love
that says a lot. That says a lot. It almost replaced your daughter.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. And we can get to some of those. I'll pull those up, Vince. If you got to keep working through, stay where you are. I'll pull up some of these starred ones. I'm assuming people want to talk about Dante Moore a little bit. Is that kind of?
At the beginning, I just said we're going to wait for you to come, so I put that out there. So you're here. So let's roll. C-Rod says if Dante doesn't pick Notre Dame and CJ stays in the 24 class, would Notre Dame just skip a QB for 23 and use that spot for another position?
I don't think Notre Dame is going to do that. I think they're going to do one of two things. I think number one, if they don't get Dante Moore, I still think they're going to recruit other 2023 quarterbacks. This is too deep of a year not to do that. It would be,
Sure.
I mean, first of all, so let's just kind of get the Dante stuff out of what I'm comfortable talking about. Number one is Notre Dame has not dropped Dante Moore. And as of 3-4 days ago, Dante Moore is still talking to Notre Dame commits. Now, obviously, certain things have changed and circumstances have changed, but we had an interview last night with Dante after CJ Carr committed. Man, he said he called CJ Carr. Now, when kids say they do that, sometimes I don't know if that means you actually called or, does calling mean texting and DMing the kids nowadays? I don't know. But he did reach out to CJ. They were former 7-on-7 teammates and congratulated him on it and said that he said followed up with, I'm still 100 with Notre Dame. That's as of last night. I think a lot of there's going to be a lot more I'm going to have to say about this on the message board. I'm still trying to formulate some thoughts and making sure that I don't do the whole clickbait crap and let's be first and get stuff out that spreads rumors like wildfire. But it was obvious listening to that interview last night. And Ryan, I don't know if I sent that to you or not yet. I got to send that to you, but it was very obvious that Dante is getting frustrated with the constant rumors and all the different things that are being said about him and all the things around him. There's clearly people around him feeding him every rumor that pops up on a Notre Dame message board. And then some are just creating rumors on their own. And then people from Notre Dame message boards, not writers, but will run with that. And it becomes, oh, the Notre Dame people are saying this.
Of course, yeah.
Which is why, you want to know why I took a month time out of talking about Dante? It's that right there. It's because everything that's being said is being taken and spun and trying to be used against Notre Dame, and I just wasn't gonna fall into that. But Notre Dame has not dropped them. CJ Carr reclassifying is a conversation that has been had. It is at beyond infancy phases. It's not even an infant yet. It's like, first trimester type of stuff, right? And so the fact that people are running with it is it's way too early for that. And then to drop Dante because he might reclassify would be very foolish and not what I'm hearing necessarily that Notre Dame plans to do. And I think that's not something they should do. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there that is wild speculation, taking what is real and turning it into something way more definitive than it is. And the reality is it's hurting Notre Dame. And so that's where things are with Dante as far as what I'm comfortable saying right this second. Beyond that, with Dante, if you don't get him, which would be disappointing, you've got to get a quarterback in this class, in my opinion. You have to. It's too good of a class. I don't care if it's Ricky Collins or Brock Glenn or Avery Johnson or whatever else. You've got to get a quarterback in this class. You cannot have one of the deepest quarterback classes ever and not get a guy from it. It would be a colossal mistake, especially when you look at the makeup of the current roster and the potential that you can only have 3 scholarship players in 2022 or 2023. And there's no guarantee that all the kids on scholarship now are going to stay. Drew Pine's going to graduate at the end of this year. You're going to guarantee me that he's going to stay with a Notre Dame degree and 3 years of eligibility left? He's going to stay at Notre Dame and be a backup to Tyler Buckner if he doesn't win a starting job? I just don't. I don't think that's wise. Now, what the other option Notre Dame could do is they could get a transfer, right, to fill the depth chart out, which is something they certainly could pursue. Having said that, I don't think. I mean, the point, they're not going to use that for another position right now, in my opinion. They're going to have to find another quarterback some way, somehow. And if they are betting on not getting a kid this year and hoping either Drew Pine stays or CJ Carr reclassifies, I think that's a mistake. That's a building your depth chart mistake, and I don't know that they're going to bank on both of those. So I think at the very least they're going to keep the transfer option open when it comes to that. But I just think there's a lot of stuff out there that is been very irresponsible in the manner in which it is reported. And there are people in Dante's ear that I wish didn't have his ear, but they do, that are using every single opportunity they can to bash Notre Dame and create issues with Notre Dame. And that's why the Notre Dame folks have to be careful with what they're saying to other reporters and allowing to be reported, because it only feeds that beast. Yep. And that's the problem. That's why when this whole thing came out about them dropping him and all that, we said, we're not commenting on that other than the one thing I said that is flat out false is people who said that Dante Moore or that CJ Carr does not want to go to the same school as Dante Moore. CJ Carr never said that. CJ Carr never said that. And it's been unfortunate, but there's just been a lot of stuff like that that's gone on that is just not accurate and unfortunate. So that's where we are with Dante. And I'll take any other Dante questions. That's fine. Now that CJ's moment is kind of, he had his moment, and
I think that was important.
And all that. It was important to focus on him last night, not Dante.
Right.
But now it's like, okay, now we got to be grown-ups and have this conversation.
Right. Did you get my text?
I did. Yep.
Okay, cool. I will continue to pull some, and then you pull some, and we'll have some fun with this. All right.
Super chat from John Rich. John, thank you very, very, very much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it, man. There we go. I heard from Hulk Strongest, I heard you guys talk about Zion yesterday, and you said that he runs track and he might not play football. But if he does, how high is his interest for Notre Dame, and is there a shot?
It's super early for that. I mean, I don't believe he's ever visited. I know he's talked good about Notre Dame and, had some good things to say. I just don't. It's so. I mean, these are 24 kids. A lot of these kids haven't been on campus. It's just too early to know if they're going to have a shot with him. And I understand the attraction. He's super fast. I get it, but I think right now
he's super fast.
It's very early. It's very early.
Colin Taylor, I feel like I've seen this question before. Maybe we didn't discuss it, but if Emil Wagner cannot get his weight up to a competitive weight, is it possible to see him tried out tight end because he has the size and the blocking ability?
I mean, as a blocker, like the way Joe Alt was used last year, sure. I mean, I think if Emil Wagner can't get to the weight necessary to be an every down tackle, and I'm hoping that he does. I mean, we'll find out over the next year or two if he can, but if he can't, there's got to be a role for him because he's still talented. So as a blocking tight end and all that kind of stuff. I mean, as long as he's willing to stay and play that. He's not a guy. The problem is he's not athletic enough to be like a defensive end in this defense. He's not athletic enough to be a tight end on an every down basis. I hope that over the next year, Emil's able to kind of add the weight, fill out his lower body, add the lower body strength, to where we don't have to ask this question anymore, because that's the big key, because he's a very talented player. I mean, look, I gave him a 5-star upside grade. I mean, that's the thing. I gave him a 5-star upside grade. And, it's hopefully that problem gets answered very quickly. Definitely.
John asks, how much pressure is on Tommy Rees to build an elite offense in 22?
I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of pressure. I think that's kind of what he needs to do. That's what he kind of needs to do in order to sort of put the Brian Kelly thing behind him, and hold on one second. So I think here's the deal. Let me kind of finish this. I'm sorry, but I got like 87 million things going on right now. I've got the message board issues and just a ton of stuff going on, so I apologize. But somebody focus in. I focus in on the chat. I apologize. Locked in. We're going to start over, right? Okay. I think there's a lot of pressure on him for a couple reasons. Number one is it's to kind of immediately put like it was somebody else holding the offense back. It wasn't him.
Right.
It's to show that, hey, I may only be 29, but this is now year 3, and I got this, right? I am the whiz kid, the wonder kid that everybody says that I am, right? Bam, nail it. Okay, done. You've proved it. All those type of things. And I think the third piece is to prove that from a recruiting standpoint that this is an offense that big time players are going to want to play for. I mean, the defense has kind of done that. It's part of the reason that they've recruited well on defense the last 2 years is Marcus Freeman, right? I mean, we can all admit that. It's Marcus Freeman, it's Mike Mickens, but with Marcus Freeman leading the charge as the defensive coordinator, now the head coach who has a defensive background. The other part, too, is the defense has put a great product on the field in recent years. I mean, they were the reason Notre Dame went to the playoff in 2018. They were the reason primarily that Notre Dame has had a lot of success that they've had in recent years. And so, that product is really impressive. And so that helps with recruiting. They're putting a lot of guys in the NFL at every position except, maybe corner. It hasn't been quite. But even there, you had Troy Pride in the 4th round and, Julian Love in the 4th round. It hasn't been great, but you've had some guys. And so that's helped. The offense has actually recruited better play. If you just look at recruiting rankings, the offense has out-recruited the defense at every position. It's just the product hasn't been as good. So I think those are the reasons. And then the final piece is there's a lot of pressure on him because that's the perceived final piece. And I part of the perception is because of what we've said. I will own that we've created that perception because I believe it to be true, that it's the final piece to being able to compete for a championship. And so those 3 things are 3 pretty big deals that I think that do put a lot of pressure on him to say, hey, you got to go out and put a pretty good product on the field this year. And I think they will. But there's certainly a lot of pressure for him to do it.
Jimmy McGill with the super chat. Thank you so much, Jimmy. He says, you guys should make a Freese Man shirt. Freese Man.
I think he's talking about like with Reese and
together. Yeah, got to show Tommy some love as well. These two are leading an exciting era of Notre Dame football. Go Irish.
I like the idea. I would like some really like cool like play on words thing. I think that'd be pretty cool. I'll say this though. I'll never put Marcus Freeman or Tommy Reese's name on a product just because I don't think it'll be. What's that?
NIL, baby. They deserve a cut.
Well, that's kind of the thing, right? Like I'm not going to go make money off their situation.
I mean, yeah.
I'd be cool, but I see people do that. And I have no judgment for people that do that. Every business owner has to make decisions that's best for him and his business. And I got no problem with it. I don't judge. It's just that's the for Irish breakdown. That's kind of the thing for me. So I just don't, I just wouldn't do that unless like when I would do it is I would do something like that if we were going to do like a charity. Like if we were ever going to do like get with the Notre Dame staff and do sort of like a fundraiser for somebody, I'd do it then. Like, hey, we're going to sell these many shirts and this is the price, and every cent that we earn goes over the next week goes to something. Right. I'd do something like that, right? That'd be pretty fun. Maybe I might reach out to some people about that. Who knows? But we'll see. But that would be the only reason I would do it. John, I love the idea though. I like thinking out the box about that stuff.
Well, you want to talk about play on words, all those different ideas we got for the show name. By the way, I did not announce the name of the show. I left that for you.
Oh yeah, we'll do that at the end. I'm excited about that. Yeah, because we finally come up with a name. We are going to launch. Well, let's just do it now. What the heck, Vince? Right? So we're going to launch our new show on Monday, and it is going to be a 6 o'clock Monday to Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern show, with Sean Stiers as the host. Sean Stiers, obviously, who is the voice of the Notre Dame women's basketball team. I did think it was pretty cool that they had the baseball thing back in 2002 when they beat Florida State to go to the College World Series. It was Sean doing the play-by-play.
Yep.
Obviously, was hosted the WSBT Sports Beat recently, but he now works with us. He works with Irish Breakdown, and he's going to launch his show on Monday. You two have been putting a lot of work to try to get him up to speed on everything that we got going on, but he's going to launch that on Monday at 6 o'clock, and we've come up with a name, and I like it. It's going to be IB Nation Sports Talk, and so that's going to with your host, Sean Stiers. So that's what we're going to call the show, and I love it. So IB Nation Sports Talk, and so we obviously have it branded with Irish Breakdown because it's IB Nation, right? And I love that people view it that way, and every time we start a show, there's always Tommy or somebody jumps in with IB Nation, and I love that. I love that community. And then there was a lot of cool stuff, like a lot of cool names that I looked at and thought, like, these are really good names, but they were kind of too Notre Dame-y.
Sure.
And they were, and the one thing is this is going to be a Notre Dame football show to begin, but there's going to be some other Notre Dame topics that Sean discusses. And there's going to be times where we maybe talk about the NFL. We're going to talk about college football for sure. We may talk about, so if we do keep sports talk, then as that audience grows and it maybe takes a little bit of a different shift than this audience, where this is more Notre Dame, then I think that's where the sports talk leaves it more open. So it's going to be under the Irish Breakdown IB Nation umbrella. It's about the IB Nation and our brand, but not making it a cookie cutter of what we're already doing.
Right. Exactly.
And so the sports talk thing I really like. So, and there were some other names that were really cool that I'm like, that'd be a good segment for there. We're gonna rename the Upon Further Review show based on a suggestion that somebody had for a name for Sean's show.
Spinoff shows that we came up with.
Yeah, love it.
It was great.
Yeah, love it. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm super excited about it. So Monday night, it's gonna be at the Irish Breakdown channel. So you don't have to sign up for a new channel. It's gonna be our channel. And so you need to hit that notification bell. Once you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and then you'll get made aware of it. But we'll promote it, through the weekend. We'll promote it on Monday in our show. But 6 o'clock Eastern, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I know Sean's going to be going on vacation at some point in time over the next month. So we'll just pick up the slack and just have the shows then. So we're going to have like the rapid fire segment that he used to do on WSBT Sports Beat, which I think is really cool. It's going to be really good. So so somebody asked, did you decide on a separate channel? It's going to be on the same channel.
Yep.
And it's easier that way. We'd have to create a new channel, build up the hours and the subscribers and all that. It's just easier to keep it on under the same family. And that's who we are. So I'm excited about it. Very excited about it.
Yeah. It's going to be,
it may not look like it, but that's I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
We all are. Yeah, there's no question. All right, back to the mailbag. John says, what changes can the NCAA make to minimize the stress on prospects and their families, if any?
I think number one, there's too much stress on prospects and their families, but even more so, there's way too much stress on coaches right now. This nonstop, like I was talking to a coach the other day, and it's like him and his wife took like a 4 or 5 day, and it's like that's their only time off the entire year. I mean, these coaches grind. They don't work 9 to 5s. They work 7 to 11s. I mean, 7 in the morning, they're in the office and they're there till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Or even if they're home, they're texting kids, DMing kids, talking to prospects, doing all that kind of stuff. And it's so year round now that they don't get time off. They don't get time off to be with their families and all this kind of stuff. So I think the NCAA needs to do is they need to make more dead periods that are true dead periods. Like you cannot talk to a prospect or a family member or a coach. Like recruiting is completely shut down in the month of July. Like completely shut down. If a kid wants to call and text you, that's cool, but you can't respond. I mean, like literally shut it down. And I think kids would understand because like that's when families can schedule their vacations. It's when coaches can schedule their vacations. Kids can start getting ready for school. All that kind of stuff. They need to make a dead period actually a dead period, not this work around the dead period where, well, if you call us, we can talk to you kind of thing. No, because then they just got coaches calling another. Hey, can you tell this kid to call me? Calling recruiting reporters or calling high school coaches or calling people that know the kid. Hey, can you have so and so call me?
Right.
And I'd love it for where there's a time where it's like, because then you just, hey, listen, over the next month we can't talk to you, and if anybody tries to talk to you, that's a violation. This is a chance for you to step away and for us to step away. I think another thing that I would like to see the NCAA do is add more official visits. Don't limit it to 5, maybe up it to 7. So some of these kids can have more opportunities to see more places where, there's a lot of kids who don't have, they're not in a position where they can travel around the country, and they may want to go to more places, but they can't afford it unofficially. So I would say add more official visits to it, up it to 7. Let kids take 7 official visits. I think you have to have a cap on it because otherwise kids just start taking official visits just to do it. Yeah, just to do it. And then now you're wasting people's time and, but, up it to 7. Allow kids to get 7 official visits. I think that's something that they could do as well. And I think the other thing that they could do is have a true early signing period, because the December early signing period is one of the dumbest things ever. Like it's a month and a half before the other, like, earlier signing period. It's not an early signing period.
Right.
An early signing period would be, look, if you want to get this thing over with, you can sign on,
should be in July, like
sometime in July,
before the football season, because there's plenty of guys that just want to focus on their season,
get it over with. Yeah.
And I have no problem. Like December doesn't really do anything for me personally because it's 3 months or 2 months before the normal one. Is that really that?
No.
It doesn't
say, well, it allows them kids could still sign as early enrollees. You could still sign your letter of intent if you're going to enroll early to school. Like
exactly.
It makes no sense. And now there's a lot of big time coaches that fight that because they want to be able to poach and flip kids down at the end. That's what the big schools do. But to me, that would protect kids. It's like, look, because you can't talk to me, you can't call me, you got to leave me alone. Let me go play my senior season.
Exactly. I would love that. And I think people would be surprised how many kids would jump.
Coaches would never go for that.
Of course not.
Because every coach wants to flip kids, during the season. But at some point in time, the NCAA needs to say, okay, I don't care about what you want. This is what's best for the young people.
Right.
And then, of course, you could make the NILs to where, like I've said before, I've made proposals for how to improve the NIL process and the transfer process. Like, look, if a head coach leaves or a coordinator leaves, you could petition to get out of your NIL or just get out of it if a head coach leaves. Or there's always a process to say, hey, look, I want to get out of this. But as long as there was no tampering, then we can have that conversation. But I think that's also going to make coaches be much more cautious of who they offer a scholarship to.
Yeah.
And you don't run into situations like Notre Dame and other programs have run into where kids want to commit early and they're like, we actually don't have a spot for you. It's an unfortunate situation. But the double-edged sword is if you don't offer a kid, he won't talk to you sometimes, right? And so it's an imperfect process. It'll never be perfected. But if there's ways, but if a kid's can sign, in July, he's going to have to know much sooner than that whether or not he's got a committable offer or not. And then that's going to help kids okay, who really wants me or who doesn't, because you're going to I'm going to send me the NIL, for that. So I think that would be something for prospects and their families would be really good. If a kid wants to get the process over, then allow him to get the process over.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not forcing kids to do it, but if they want to, if they know where they're going, they're happy with it, you sign. I mean, it's
right.
Yeah, just, I don't know. For me, it makes too much sense, but that's me.
Which is why the NCAA will never do it.
Exactly. Craig with a super chat. Thank you so much, Craig. He says, with us getting CJ Carr, how will that affect the wide receiver room for the next 2 to 3 years?
Certainly have an impact. I mean, I've already talked to a parent of a receiver that's already knows exactly who CJ Carr is and had some positive things to say about it. So, like, anytime you get a big-time commit from a quarterback, and CJ Carr is a 5-star recruit, he has a name. I mean, look, yesterday on ESPN, if you go to ESPN.com, one of the stories that was one of the lead stories on there was, grandson of legendary head coach, commits to Notre Dame. And I mean, it was on there. It's not on there now, but as of an hour ago, it was on there. Right. To where it was one of the lead stories
I was there.
It's still one of the lead stories on the football page. It's grandson of Michigan great Carr chooses Irish. Right. Like it's a news story.
Absolutely.
And he's a talented quarterback, and kids have seen him at events and camps and things like that. So it'll have an impact. How it will affect the receiver room the next 2 to 3 years? It's going to help them. It's going to help them continue to recruit the guys that they want. Right. That's the key. But at the end of the day, the quarterback's going to play a big role, but it's got to ultimately come down to the coaches doing what they need to do.
It doesn't hurt them. That's for sure.
Right.
I mean,
it helps. It certainly helps. Yeah. You need both, right? To really land big-time receivers, you need coaches that are doing the job, and then you need quarterbacks that can kind of help you get that job done. No doubt about it.
John says, as tempting as it may be, do you think the staff needs to be careful and not over-recruit the offensive line and defensive line in 23? Look at the current targets who show great interest. Notre Dame could possibly 6 on both sides.
I would say, John, that's always a legitimate fear and always something you have to be careful of. And I've mentioned that about wide receiver. Like, I want to be careful not to overload receiver with players. But to me, 5 receivers is like taking 6 or 7 offensive linemen because there's just more guys on the field, right? Normally you only have 3 receivers in the field, sometimes 2. You're always going to have at least 3 defensive linemen. You're usually going to have 4. Because even last year when Notre Dame went to their odd front, they still had a 4th defensive lineman in the game. Right. He just was playing off ball. And so, offensive line's always going to have at least 5 guys on the field. So you got to look at it kind of that way. The numbers are a little different. 3 doesn't mean 3 for every position. 3 quarterbacks in one class is way too many. 3 offensive linemen in the class, you didn't get enough offensive linemen. So it has to be looked at. But no, John, I think that's always a good warning to have. I would say in this instance, it all comes down to who do you have on your board and what's kind of coming down the pike. The reason I'd be really careful not to overload on the defensive line is because I look at 2024 and I see 2 guys already in the class. I see Elijah Rushing. I see Nigel Smith. I see Justin Scott. I see Jayshon Ross. There's a lot of talented linemen on the board. I'm not trying to take spots away from them. Give me 5 guys and call it a day. And that's even one beyond what the original number was, but you just can't turn down a guy like Jason Moore. You can't turn down Boubacar. Jason Moore is it for the defensive line, in my opinion. Now, the next thing is, well, what about Samuel Mpemba? I still think that you have to look at him differently. He is a hybrid player, right? He just is. Now, do I think ultimately he could end up being an edge player? Yes, but that's not how he's being viewed. So I think that's kind of how I look at that. And then offensive line's the one that this is a year where John, I would normally say no way take 6. I've said this multiple times this week. I'll repeat it again. What is it, Vince? I am vehemently and belligerently against taking 6 offensive linemen, but this year is an exception just because of who's on the board. I think because of the needs you have, they've recruited some really good offensive linemen, but at certain spots, like the last couple of years, if we're being honest, the last 3 years, it's been really interior heavy. There's a lot of guys that project more inside. If you look at Tosh Baker in 2020, you look at Joe Walton, Blake Fisher in 2021, and Caleb Johnson to a degree, right? And then last year, really Emil Wagner is the only pure tackle that I think that they signed. Maybe Ty Chan can play tackle. Maybe Ashton Craig can play tackle, but it was very interior heavy. So you needed guards. You needed guys on the edge this year. Your center position's not looking super great moving forward once these classes come, because Zeke Correll's going to be a 5th year guy next year, and Jarrett Patterson's gone next year. So that position needed to get met. So because there's some really good tackles on the board, like Elijah Page is a guy that Notre Dame is looking for, and you can say, well, I'm not going to turn down an Elijah Page to wait on Monroe Freeling or Charles Jagasol, but I'm also not going to turn them down if I'm able to take Elijah Page, right? So I say load up, because I think the fact that you have guys like Joe Otting and guys like that are projectable guys, need time. You can spread that 6-man class out a little bit. You know what I mean, Vince? So are you scrolling through questions?
Yeah,
because you look like you're about to fall asleep.
Sorry, no, I was scrolling and trying to figure out if I had certain things starred, and
Gotcha.
That's my focused face.
Gotcha.
All right, let's roll through a couple of these super chats, Brian, because I want to make sure everybody gets their voice heard. Jay Henry, thank you so much. He says, "What would your pitch be to Richard Young if you were recruiting him to Notre Dame?"
That's a great question, Jay. Jay talks a lot about running back room. I love it. He also asked about how CJ Carr would impact the running back recruits last night. So, we don't often talk about running back because it has been devalued so much as a position. But I think the thing you point to is, number one, you don't have a lot of big name running backs on the roster. Now, I think Janarian Price is going to be a stud. I think Chris Tyree could be an impact player, but they're not going to have a scenario where it's like they're going to scare other guys, right? Like, you don't have that kind of situation at running back. So I think that helps. So, the depth chart helps. The fact that even if you look at the current depth chart, there's not a lot of, every down backs. There's Estime and Diggs. A lot of those other guys can be viewed as like, he can play slot. He's an explosive guy, doesn't need a ton of carries to do damage. And you look at him and you're like, even in Jay Lamar, it's like Jay Lamar, we talk about Jay, he can play some slot. He can do some this, he can do some that. Whereas Estime, Diggs, who's hurt, and then Richard Young would be like you're the horse. Right. And then the other thing you saw was like, dude, they're going to be juniors when you come here. So either A, you beat them out, or B, if they beat you out, they're gone after that year. Right. You're still going to play, but they're gone after that year. So I think that's the kind of thing that factors into it as well. So I think all those things kind of go together. And then the final piece is, do you or do you not want to run behind the best offensive line in the country the next 3 years?
That's honestly what I'm leading with.
Right. I think that's kind of you always bring the big gun last in my recruiting.
All right, that's fair.
Because the reason is like if you kind of take your best shot at the beginning and that doesn't work, I got nothing else, right? Like, so you build them up to the big finale of okay, do you want to play behind these monsters the next few years? That's the final piece. So you lay all the other foundation, it's like you're all in the gimmicks, right? So one of the things I would do towards the end of his visit is I'd have him kind of walk into the Goog, right? Somewhere cool. I would have the Joe Moore trophy like there. I would have like Blake Fisher and Joe Walt and all these monsters there, and Harry Heastand there, and just be like, look, man, let's watch some film together, right? And just show him clips of them just dominating, right? You can show pass clips for all I care. Show spring game clips. Find every dominant block you've ever made under Harry Heastand and throw that sucker out there and be like, this is what you could run behind.
Right.
I'd point out the fact that Kyron Williams was a 2-time 1,000-yard running back. He was a 3-star recruit. You could point out Josh Adams went undrafted after rushing for 1,400 yards because no one thought it was about Josh Adams. It was about the line. And he had some injuries, but that's the angle you're going with.
Yeah, right.
I think all those things, and all those things are true, Jay. And that's the thing is like, and then of course there's some other things, tight ends. We've got receivers. We got stuff to take pressure. You have a 5-star quarterback now to take some of that pressure off. You like talked about last night. I think there's a lot that Notre Dame can sell. And I would sell too with Richard Young. I think it's very important for Notre Dame to focus on what stands out. We just talked a lot about the football, but you know who else is going to make a similar pitch? Bama, Georgia.
Oh, of course.
But really, don't be afraid to emphasize the things that make you different. Because if those things aren't selling points to Richard Young or any other running back, then they shouldn't be coming to Notre Dame. And so I think that's the thing I would really focus. Yeah, talk about the football, but hey, man, look, it's like, who was it? Was it CJ Carr that was like, where else can you go? Somebody else might have said this too. And this is something that Notre Dame is selling to kids. And so you're hearing these players say it more and more. Where else can you get an Ivy League education and a chance to play for a national championship at the Power 5 level? There's one place you can do that, and that's Notre Dame.
No doubt about that. Alan Watson with the super chat. Thanks, Alan. He says, can we now finally put to rest that it is hard to recruit at Notre Dame?
No, we shouldn't put that to rest because it is hard at Notre Dame. No one has ever said it's not hard.
Possible. I think
right.
You got to change
terminology. It is harder to recruit at Notre Dame than other places.
These coaches are working their butts off.
Right.
They are working hard.
I get what you're saying, Alan. Vince, I get what Alan's saying, right? The thing is, it's not easy to recruit at Notre Dame.
It's always been an excuse.
Correct.
It's always been
everything that Brian Kelly said about Notre Dame was true from the standpoint of those are the things that you have to deal with. It is in the north. It is not a big town. The weather isn't great, and the academic. But all those things are like, okay, do you use those things and you constantly complain about them? Or do you say, hey, we're going to find a way to make these advantages?
Right.
Hey, look, we are a smaller town, which means you have a lot fewer distractions that get you in trouble over the next 3 years as you focus in on the two most important things, which is becoming an elite student and becoming an elite footballer and winning a championship, right? I mean, so that's the thing is it's okay to embrace it being harder than other places without using it as an excuse to not get the job done. What this staff is proving is that it is hard, but if you put in the work, you can get it done. If you hire the right staff, you can get it done. If you put a good enough product on the field, you can get it done. And anyone who hasn't recruited well at Notre Dame used all those things as excuses. They were projecting their own failures onto the university. That's absolutely what it was.
Absolutely.
And so I think we need to embrace how hard it is, because then it almost does the opposite.
Yeah.
You diminish the work that this staff is putting in.
Exactly, because these dudes are putting in work. There's no question about that. DT Roll Hunter, thank you very much for the super chat.
I think he kind of goes by Troll Hunter, maybe.
Oh,
I don't know. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Well, either way, debate. Yes.
I'll thank for the super chat. He wants Ryan to play the IB theme with his recorder. I didn't know Ryan had a recorder. Is that something you guys have talked about in the past?
No.
Okay. I don't know where that came from then, DT. I'll just let that one go. Since
we play the IB theme at the beginning of every show.
Right. He wants it with a I don't know. Anyway. Okay.
With his recorder. I don't know what that even means.
Like in fourth grade when you get a recorder, like I think that's what he's talking about.
I don't know what you guys did at your school, but we weren't doing that in the fourth grade.
It's like a plastic flute. It's like
never ever done that before in my life.
Uncultured swine. That's all.
I'll own that. Okay. We were out playing basketball and climbing on monkey bars, and
they forced recorders on us. All right.
We were playing with flutes. You know what I mean? Like plastic flutes. What kind of freaking school did you go to?
I'm just gonna pass. I'm just going to the next one. AST 12321. Thanks for the super chat, man. Okay. Watch this be a massive head fake with Dante drama, and he is the 4 o'clock commit.
He's not.
We didn't say it was a commitment. We just said there was a
there will be, but that player's going to commit before 4 o'clock. We're going to have him on at 4 during our show. We're going to talk to him about his show. We'll break down his film, do all that kind of stuff. So I don't mind saying that. It's going to happen here in 15 minutes. There's going to be a player committing sooner, but we are going to have our show afterwards so as to not steal his moment and take that away. And that's not an accusation. It's simply that his commitment hasn't been made public. People don't know directly that he's committing today. And the only way we can advertise for a show right after 3 o'clock is to kind of say,
it's a recruiting
we can
show.
do one of two things. We can do that lame clickbaity thing that people that you could do like it's different on Twitter, but on YouTube of, hey, join us for a special announcement. Yeah. Or we can just wait and do it afterwards and let him have his moment, and then we'll put up. And this, again, when I say I'm not taking a shot at anybody else. I'm just saying that's what we do.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
So, but it's not, I will say it's not Dante Moore. It's a 23 kid, but it's not Dante Moore. So I hate to break it to you, but it would be pretty sweet if that was true, right?
That would be a great head fake. Yeah. I'll agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I would be all for that.
MRent520, thank you very much for the super chat. Outside of Page, is there anyone in Arizona that Notre Dame is taking a hard look at? Are they looking at Elijah Rushing out of Tucson?
Big time looking at him. Yeah. Right. He visited this, I think it was April. Elijah visited campus. They love Elijah Rushing. Now, will he pick or not? I don't know. He's getting looked at. I mean, everybody's looking at Elijah Rushing. So they're certainly on him. And he likes Notre Dame a lot. It's just there's a long way to go. But, yes, he is definitely a guy that's on their board. And, of course, they got Benjamin Morrison last year. But there's another Arizona kid, and for the life of me, his name escapes me. But I think there's another Arizona kid that they're looking at too. But, yes, Notre Dame is starting to spend more and more time that –
Is Elijah just the name of people in Arizona? Is that how that works? Or just ones that Notre Dame's interested in?
And by the way, the person committing today is not the person that was supposed to commit this past weekend. It's two completely different. That they ended up pushing back. It has nothing to do with that. It's a completely different situation. Ooh. So, as I said, it's a 2023 kid.
Okay. Lawrence Adams with the super chat. Thank you very much. Felt good to get CJ. There's something special about a big-time player that knows how special Notre Dame is and doesn't need to poke around with other schools.
Yeah, I think that's unfair. I think that I get where you're coming from, but I think that's unfair. I think people are looking at, and I'm not talking necessarily about you, Lawrence, but I think people are frustrated with Dante's situation. And I don't know if I said this here, but I think the reason Dante's situation become drama is because we've made it drama.
Right.
Not because he's made a drama. Dante said all along, I'm taking all my visits. He's done exactly what he said he's going to do. Right. We, the recruiting media has turned this into a circus.
Absolutely.
People around him that have his ear. This is where I do hold him responsible for this. You've allowed yourself to be used by people that are using you and your recruitment to build up their own hype. Right. And that's unfortunate. I wish he would just kind of stop talking to the media. Right. But, that's the unfortunate thing. But this isn't a Dante problem. Dante has always said that. And there's nothing wrong with a kid in his one chance to have a moment to take advantage of that moment and get out and see places. I have no problem with that. And how many kids from a Detroit public school are going to get a chance to go see Oregon and Texas A&M and Florida and LSU and Alabama and Georgia and USC and every other school you might want to visit?
And I really would. Even if you know where you're going to go, I would encourage you to take visits.
And CJ Carr did that. CJ Carr took a lot more visits during the season in the summer than Dante. Dante did his later. It's just the way that it worked out. But CJ Carr went to Miami. He went to Georgia. He went to Wisconsin, Michigan State, Michigan. He's been all over the place. But just because he decided to go sooner doesn't mean he's right and Dante's wrong. I think that's an unfair thing. And I understand the frustration, but I think we're taking we all have frustration about the situation, but I think we're taking it out on the wrong people. And Dante is not. Now, are there some people around him I would take my frustration out on? You better believe it. But not. I'm a lot. There's a lot of stuff I can't say. Can't even say on the message board. But there's a reason I'm not taking shots at Dante. And I would encourage all of you to do the same thing. This isn't a CJ's better than Dante thing because he committed early. That's unfair. You can think he's a better player, and you can like that he committed early and say, who'd you rather have, this guy, this guy? Well, I want the guy that wants to be at Notre Dame. Totally fair. Totally fair. It just don't then turn it into, well, this guy's not right because he's doing it a different way. Right. That's my only wish, that we would do that.
The Spanky with a super chat. I think it's safe to say this is the best the hosts have ever looked on this show.
I assume he put that up before I was on the show.
Wow. Yeah, he did. It was 118, but still.
See, the thing is, but Spanky knows I know what he looks like. So I'm not going to be insulted by that.
He's always coming after you hard, man.
He's just still mad for the last 10 years. He's convinced himself that he could sack me in high school, and he's still mad about that I won't admit that he could sack me.
He just loves taking shots.
That's my guy, though.
I know. Lawrence Adams, thanks for the super chat. Also, with the current coaches and the talent that's coming in, it's going to be hard not to be a real player in the national title hunt. I'm so happy.
Yeah, and that's the focus, right? That should be the focus.
Absolutely.
There's no question.
There's no question about that.
There's no doubt. And the thing is, here's the thing that Lawrence that makes me feel good about where Notre Dame is at right now. If they don't make it, if they don't win a title, it's not going to be for lack of effort.
Yeah, right.
And I can somewhat live with that.
Sure.
Like I can somewhat live with say, you know what, Notre Dame's program is just not where it needs to be because of whatever factors. And then you can look at I can't accept blaming the institution when you haven't done everything you need to do. The way this staff is, if they're able to not get where they need to get to, then they're going to have a much more of a reason to go to the administration. Say, hey, look, we need this. We've done everything we can. You need to step up and help us out, which I think is in some ways is accurate. But when you're not doing what you need to do, you can't then blame the school because you can't disappear for 2 months in the winter and then 2 months in the summer and then complain about how hard it is to get kids into school. Well, the head coach isn't around for 4 or 5 months of the year. Of course, it's going to be harder to get top classes. Because this is all Nick Saban does, right? This is all Dabo does, this is all Kirby does. So that's the thing I feel good about is you're going to have a much better feel for where the program is short from an institutional standpoint. But if they don't make it, they're going to not make it because they gave it their best shot. And I can always respect that. I can't stand people that don't work and then blame others for why they weren't successful.
Right.
I can't stand that. And I think over the last couple of years, people understand who I'm talking about. Who are the couple people I'm talking about in that regard. And no, I'm not talking about Jeff Quinn because I've never questioned Jeff Quinn's work ethic.
I've never have either.
Yeah.
No, not at all. John with a super chat. I like the Buckner rushing question. I do. However, in Harry, I trust the line is going to move the line of scrimmage again, and our backs are going to feast. The question, by the way, Brian, was how many games do you think Buckner will be the leading rusher? And the person he believes his bold prediction is 4. And then Ryan and I kind of backed it down a little bit, and we put the over-under at 2.5.
My first thought is I hope it's not more than 3. I'd be comfortable with 4 because you got to understand something about him being the leading rusher. To John's, to John's thing is like he's going to get scramble yards, right, which are not run plays where he may slide or dip out of bounds, and then. With the way the read zone are, because of how good Harry Hiestan's line we expect to be, and the running backs, if Logan Diggs or Tyree or Estime or somebody else is just crushing the D line, it could take one carry for Tyler Buckner to pull that thing out and get the 50 easiest yards you're ever going to get.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. I think where I would be concerned if it was beyond 3 or 4 is if it's like where you're running him 18, 20 times. That would be the concern. But if he's got like 9 or 10 carries and like 4 or 5 of them are scrambles, a couple other read zones where he pulls it and runs for 15 yards and doesn't take much of a hit, I can live with that. And if he's doing that, I'll do it he can be the leading rusher every game for all I care, as long as it's coming from that. But I also think the other thing to consider is I think it would be where I would kind of phrase it differently is how many games will Tyler Buckner outgain the running backs? Because I could see Tyler Buckner leading the team in rushing yards with 55 yards if the other running backs carries are being split between 3 or 4 guys. Running backs could combine for 200 yards and nobody has more than 55. You know what I mean? So that's kind of, and then because then you've got jet sweeps from Brain Lindsay. I mean, they're going to get their rushing yards a lot of different ways. And so there may be games where they run for 280 yards and nobody gets to 100 yards rushing. So I think that factors into it as well, Vince, because I think as soon as we think rushing, leading rusher, we think 110 yards.
Right.
And there could be some games usually Buckner leads the team in rushing with, here's the other thing. What if they're blowing a team out and he rips off a 45-yard run in the first quarter?
Yeah. There's so many different pieces and parts to who leads the team in rushing.
As long as it's not because they're just running him a lot week after week, I can live with it. But I think 3 to 4 would be my max where I'd be calm. After that, I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's where I would kind of be.
Scott Gibbs has a super sticker. Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate it. And I believe this is the final super chat, and we can get back to some other questions. Marquis Stewart, thank you so much. He says, didn't get to comment on CJ Carr, but I like that kid a lot. He has the swag that reminds me of Burrow that attracts other swaggy players. Excited.
I see a lot of people mentioning Joe Burrow, and I think it's for 2 reasons. 1, Mark hits on it. It's the swag. The 2, I think they have very similar haircuts. And I think he just kind of looks like Joe Burrow a little bit. But I think the swagger, I like that comment. I think there's a lot. I mean, we'll see if he's got that kind of talent, right? I mean, Joe Burrow was also a really good basketball player. I mean, he was a really athletic guy. We'll see if he's got kind of talent. I just have a hard time comparing a guy to a number 1 overall draft pick just because I feel like I'm putting too much pressure on him. But I can definitely see why people make the Joe Burrow comparisons.
But I don't think people were thinking Joe Burrow was going to be the number 1 draft pick while he was still at Ohio State.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct. But no one's referring to the high school version of Joe Burrow.
Exactly.
When they talk about comparison to CJ Carr, we're
Right.
talking about the LSU version of
That's
CJ
true.
Carr.
That's a good point. Shane O'Shea says, hey, guys, had Lou Holtz stayed at Notre Dame longer, do you think he would have opened up the offense more? How do you think he would have done with Jarius Jackson?
I think Jarius Jackson would have been the reason he didn't open the offense up more because I think Jarius is such a good runner. He'd have felt compelled to keep. I mean, if he didn't open it up for Ron Paulus, he wasn't going to open it up for Jarius Jackson. I'm sorry. I mean, he didn't open it up for Rick Meyer. And now Sean has the theory to this that he feels that had they gotten Randy Moss, he would have opened it up.
Mm.
Because if you look at that, they were going to have Randy Moss and Derek Mays and some really talented receivers in the same class. But when they couldn't get Randy Moss, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. So if he had stayed longer to open it up, it just depends on if he would have been able to get some guys to do that with. Be interesting, but I don't think he would have. I just think that's who Coach Holtz was. At the end of the day, I just think that's who he was. I think they could have opened it up at the first game, it didn't go well. He would have gone right back to, all right, we're running power football again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, I saved this one for you. Given the talent on the current roster, what offensive scheme do you think best fits the recruited talent?
I think an offense that spreads things out. I think an offense that is willing to, get the ball in the perimeter, use the quick game, RPOs, screens, things along those lines. I think are both things that fit this offense. Using an offense that allows the quarterback to run. I don't think there's one specific offense. I think I could see this offense flourishing in sort of like the Clemson spread. I think this offense could flourish in sort of the pro style spread that it's not a pro style spread. I'm trying to think. I don't even know how to really describe Ohio State's offense as far as what it fits under, but I'd just say pro style spread. And then there's the pro style spread that Notre Dame runs, which is a little bit different. It's more, pro style formationally and, balance and those type of things where Ryan Day's kind of got some like pro style pass concepts with some air raid run concepts. It's like a little bit of a different, but I think all those could work. I think but as long it's about balance, it's about running the football and getting the ball in the perimeter. I think you could find a lot of different ways. And so I don't think there's one. I think anything that's pro style or a college spread with Tyler Buchner would be effective, in my opinion. Now, I'm not an air raid guy. That's just, it's just not where I'm at, Vince.
I know you're not an air raid guy, and I know you're not about to run triple either. So those are things that are not coming out of the Brian Driscoll playbook.
No.
Tommy
I'd run
Guns.
triple, but just not in that fashion. I mean, I'd run it out of like read zone and right.
Tommy Guns, who, in your opinion, will become the next legendary head coach once Saban retires? Save that one for you, too.
Is Dabo still really good? I mean, are they still competing for championships? Because I got a debate with somebody the other day, and it was really good. It was a really fun conversation, but he was trying to say, like, Dabo's not the number 2 coach in the country. And I was like, I think it just says you don't like Dabo, right? Like, but, I mean, what he's done is really effective. But it was a fun conversation. But, I think, who's the next legendary head coach? I'm hoping it's Marcus Freeman.
I was going to say, I know that sounds homerish right now, but like that's the first person that I thought of. I mean, young, charismatic. He's getting the guys in. Obviously you need to start stacking a couple national titles and things of that nature, and you got to be in the conversation. But I don't think there's many people out there that have a better possibility of being that guy. So is it fanboyish? Maybe, but at the same time, we're close to it. So it's a little bit easier to say that.
Yeah, real quick, want to mention something here, real quick, Vince. That somebody just asked if Luke Breeding asked, "Am I going to wait till 4:00 to announce a commitment?" No, I'm going to announce the commitment when the young man makes his decision, and we'll probably announce it like during this show because it's supposed to be coming up here really soon. But but we'll announce it then. I'm just not going to, we're not doing it now because obviously the young man hasn't made it known.
Right.
But I expect him to, he told me he's going to tweet something out around 3:00. So we'll have something. We'll probably be doing, we're going to be doing the show still then. So,
right.
Yeah.
Got Charlie Weiss's last belt loop just put one in for us. Thank you so much. He says, could you see Dante making a decision in the next 2 weeks with Tate coming as well? Sean Davis made an interesting comment, not a guarantee, but basically saying he will break away from dad.
I don't think he does that anytime soon. I don't. And this is the thing. I think if Notre Dame is got the patience to see this one through and stays the course, I still think they're going to get Dante Moore. The only thing that's changed for me is questioning whether or not Notre Dame's willing to stay the course. My only question mark at this point in time. Are they willing to stay the course? If they're willing to stay the course, then I still think they get Dante Moore. So I don't know if that answers questions, and I'll have more reasons on that on the board later. But no, I don't think Dante – Sean's not giving you until like we know that Dante's going to commit. That's Sean's feel for it, I believe. And I'll ask him about it. But, yeah,
sure.
I wish he would, honestly. I wish he would, because I think if he did decide in the next couple of weeks, it'd be for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So
we can stop talking about it. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Oh, no, we'd talk about it even more, but it'd be more joyous. It'd be more joyous. It'd be a joyous. We might talk about it for 3 straight days.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just want to follow up on yesterday's Dante Moore committed conversation and with more Dante Moore committed, because I'd be fired up.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it'd be phenomenal. It'd be absolutely great. So I would love it if he did that.
Rob wants to know, he says, just a thought, could IB Nation be sponsored by the green Mountain Dew? Not the others, but the green one. Wait, Code Red is okay too, but that's it.
I've never tried Code Red, to be honest with you. Vince, have you ever had that? Yeah, I'm kind of like one of those like don't mess up a good thing kind of people. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I like it this way.
Yeah, not touching it.
Right. So why would I want to try something else when I like it? I like it the way that I like it. Right. So I'm weird like that though.
No, I'm with you on that one.
But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. But yeah, I would. I would. I mean, look, if they want to look, I've said this before, man. We said this when we first launched. If Mountain Dew wants to sponsor us, go for it. I'm all for that. But they're not going to.
Yeah, I don't think we're really on their radar, unfortunately. But I mean, that'd be great if that was the case. That'd be awesome. It'd be really awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. We got a 2-parter here. Okay. Also, a completely unfair comp for CJ Carr, a more athletic version of Peyton Manning. Manning had advanced game IQ, feel, anticipation, ball placement. His arm strength was questioned going into the NFL draft. Ryan Leaf had the cannon arm. Seems like he had enough arm talent, plenty of accuracy, unique anticipation, and it. All things CJ seems to have in spades for his age.
So Elijah Page just committed to Notre Dame.
I was wondering what you were doing.
Yeah. So just wanted to let everybody know he has done that. So we are publishing that, Vince. So you're going to go ahead and address that question. That's who we will be discussing at 4:00.
Okay. So Elijah Page
Page has committed to Notre Dame. So we will break that whole thing down at 4:00. We're gonna go through all that kind of good stuff. So we'll have all that at 4:00. I promise.
Okay, sounds good.
But I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that's kind of who we were talking about there.
As far as the comp to Peyton Manning, I mean, when you take the name out and you just talk about the attributes, I would say that I would agree with that. When you start talking Peyton Mannings and Tom Brady's and things of that nature, it's just so unfair to the kid. But what he was talking about, the accuracy, the anticipation, the it factor, all of those different things. Yeah, I mean, I could see that as a comparison, and I have no problem with it. I think he is a smart player. I think he, if we're looking back at the first part, the game IQ, the feel, the ball placement, he has elite ball placement. There is no question about that. No question. I don't know that I'm ready to compare him to Peyton Manning just yet.
Right.
But all of those things he does have.
But I understand where he's coming. I get the comparison. I think that totally makes sense. I get the comparison.
Absolutely.
Yep, I get that. I mean, because again, you're talking about in the Ryan, and I think the fact of the Ryan Leaf thing makes a lot of sense too, because you're looking at a guy that like had all those physical tools, but wasn't, didn't pan out in the NFL because of some of the other factors, right? And so yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Sure,
makes a lot of sense.
Colin Taylor says, I know you guys have said 24 tight end Jack Larson comp is Tommy Tremble, but does Jack have the want to block like Tremble did, or is it more of a size comp?
I think it's an overall thing. I think you're taking one aspect of Tommy Tremble's game and in which how he was used at Notre Dame, and I would say that's not necessarily his whole game, right? I mean, I think that's how Notre Dame used him, but I think Tommy Tremble could have been used in a lot of different ways. I don't think it was just that. I think that's what they chose to do, right? But I think Tommy Tremble is a guy that should have been used in the pass game more. I think he should have been used more as a vertical player
during that, during when he was there.
Right?
He's not just an H back. Absolutely,
right. And that's how. I mean, again, so I mean, I think the issue there is more of we're focusing on his usage more so than we should be focusing on his game. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what my response would be for that one. Hold on one second, Vince. I have to. I'm just tweeting this stuff out. So if you want to go to the next one,
I figured. Okay, this is a very interesting one, and one that I know Brian can answer very quickly without even thinking about it. With your chest, which I love that name, by the way. I trust IB implicitly. However, I always worry when it starts out like that. I'd still like to know what specifically makes it so that left and right tackles are not interchangeable on the offensive line. What skill or ability is different?
Well, I think that's a pretty easy one to answer. First of all, I do think you always want to have interchangeable offensive linemen. I think that's the one thing that I like about the current group of players. I think Joe Alt could play right tackle, not as good as he's a left tackle, but I think that Blake Fisher could play both equally well. That was the one thing that I think people misunderstood about our comments about Blake Fisher was they thought we were saying he couldn't play left tackle. Like, no, I think Blake Fisher can play anything that he wants to play. I mean, right. I think he can go both guard spots, center. I mean, not center, but both tackle spots. And I'm sure if Blake wanted to be a center, he could. I just think that'd be a little bit of a waste. But I think it's really simple, and I'm going to make it as simplistic as possible. Left tackle is a position where with most teams, you are protecting the blind side of your quarterback. I think the advent of the shotgun has made that a little less of a need as it used to be. But even still, even in the shotgun, you need a guy that can really give that quarterback confidence on the backside that this guy is going to be a really, really good pass blocker. And then, of course, on the other side, you need a guy that I prefer a guy that's more of a run blocker. I want someone who can really run the football at a high level. I want someone who, can drive, because teams tend to be, when you look at statistics, teams tend to be a little bit more right-handed in the run game. Yeah. And so you really want your power side at times. And again, this is really simplified, and it's not like, oh, you have to do it this way. But I think that's kind of the deal. And then also, if you have a guy that's not a great pass blocker, you can protect him. It's better to protect him on the right side, because you can do things on the left side. You can have a chip and you can backs and all that, but you don't want to have to be helping the quarterback's backside. You want to have the quarterback be able to use his eyes to also protect against a guy who maybe isn't a great run blocker or pass blocker, excuse me. Right. And it's easier for a right-handed quarterback, and most quarterbacks are right-handed, to do that on the right side. Because if I'm a quarterback and I'm dropping back, it's easier for me to see out of my peripheral to my right hand like this than to my left. And so that's the thing you have to think about, is how that's why that makes sense. That's why it's a little easier to do that onto your right side. It's just your peripheral is just better that way. And I can attest to that. I only got blindsided once in my entire career. And that was my junior year of college. But that was more because my line stunk so bad. I was always kind of on the lookout. You know what I mean? But still, even then, you have to really. It was because I felt that I had a good feel for it, though. But you don't want to have you want your quarterback to have a sense of, I can just trust that my blind side is going to be protected. You just want to have that trust. It's just Absolutely. A very important thing. And so I think that's why. But ideally, you want to have it to where you can protect on both sides and play guys on both sides.
I'm bringing this next one up just because it didn't age well and it makes me laugh a little bit. So it's nothing against you, Jason, because it's a really good question. He says, do you think Page not committing by now is a good indicator that Notre Dame is going after both Jagasaw and Freeland hard down the stretch? I just thought that was funny. It was at 102. So, I mean, it's over 2 hours old. But,
right. Well, that's the thing is we all have to remember that just because a kid hasn't committed publicly doesn't mean a kid hasn't committed.
That's also a very good point.
I mean, I scheduled Elijah Page to be on the show like 2-3 days ago. Right. I mean, so we've known this, and it should just always just be a little patient, right? Just be a little patient, let things play out, and we'll find out. But I think had they not taken his commitment, I think that would have been a sign. To his point, it would have been a sign if he actually didn't commit at this point in time. I do think that would have been a sign that they're feeling good. But I think the other part of it too, Vince, is Notre Dame is going to go after both of those guys. We'll talk about this more on the show with Elijah Page here coming up, but they're going to keep recruiting those guys. There's no question about it. We put this up on the message board the other day. I don't know where this notion that they weren't going to recruit those two guys came from, but that was never the issue. They were always going to recruit them. It's just, I think Notre Dame doesn't have the optimism about where they stand with Monroe Freeling that we do. We're a little bit more optimistic about where they stand than I think that Notre Dame is at this point in time. Let's get to last couple events, and then we gotta get ready because I gotta get.
I'm scanning through. I'm trying to look for some good ones. Again, I'm back at like 110.
Well, they're all good ones. We're looking for the best ones.
You're such
always
a good
hate on y'all, man. Just kidding.
Such a good guy.
I try.
All right, here we go. This will be a fun one for you. Zach Martin wants to know Holt's era through now. Put together your best offensive line.
Oh gosh. Okay, so and I'm going to put them with the positions I want, not necessarily the positions they played. Okay. So, and I'm going to try to. Okay, so I'm going to go left guard. I'm going to go Aaron Taylor.
Aaron Taylor, left guard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm repeating it out loud because because Chris, our guy that works for us sometimes, Chris Summers, an offensive line coach, and he loves this question. He's already texting me. I'm repeating it out loud so he can hear what I'm coming.
I'll go left to right. Okay, I'm going to go Zach Martin, left tackle.
Zach Martin, left tackle.
And I know that he was a guard in the NFL, but in college football, he was you talk about a guy that just could say, okay, I don't have to worry about my backside anymore as a pass protector. He's that guy. With all due respect to Ronnie Stanley and Andy Heck and Liam Meikenberg, Ryan Taylor, Zach Martin was special. And so he would be my left tackle. Okay. I would go Quentin Nelson as my left guard.
Yep.
Jeff Fane's my center. With all due respect to, Tim Ruddy would be probably my runner-up. He was phenomenal. Mike Helt was the center, I believe, on the title team in '88. I would go. I said Quentin Nelson, a left guard, right? I would go right guards. I have to think about this one for a second. I'm just trying to think. I'm going all the way back to the Lou Holtz era and just trying to remember some of those guys that were part of those teams. So I got Fane at center, Quentin Nelson. It's a hard one because there's some really, really good players there. I'm like, okay, where do I fit Andy Heck in here? Where do I fit Liam Meikenberg in here? Where do I fit Ronnie Stanley in here?
Yeah.
My right guard, boy, that's a tough one. That's really a tough one because I don't have Ryan Harris in that group. It's a tough one. Let me think about this one for a second. My right side, I'm having a little bit of a tougher time with.
You got your left side down. The right side is up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, the left side was pretty easy. So no, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. I said Aaron. Hold on. No, I'm sorry. I got this. Left tackle, Zach Martin. Left guard, Quentin Nelson. Center, Jeff Fane. Right guard, Quentin Nelson. Right tackle, that would be a little bit tougher. Right tackle, I'd probably have to go with either Liam Eichenberg or Ronnie Stanley. I'd probably go with Ryan Stanley.
So Chris just pulled up your article, top 5 offensive linemen of all time.
My article?
Your article.
What do I have?
You got Quentin Nelson, number 1. Keep scrolling for me. You got Aaron Taylor.
Okay, they're both on my list.
Zach Martin.
Okay, he's on my list.
You got Ronnie Stanley. Is 4.
Okay. That's not all time. I wouldn't have had Ronnie Stanley all time.
And you got tied for 5th, Jeff Fain and Tim Ruddy.
Yeah, so that's pretty much my starting lineup, right? So I was consistent with it.
Yeah, the title of your article is Top 5 Notre Dame Offensive Linemen, breaking down the 5 best offensive linemen to play at Notre Dame in the last 3 decades. And you
because I don't do the all-time thing because I didn't watch guys play under Frank Leahy.
April 2020 is when you put that out.
So I'm still on track, right? I said Ronnie Stanley at right tackle. So I had my 5, and then I said Tim Ruddy'd be next. So I had some consistency there.
So there you go. So that's good.
Yeah, so
That's
it's like, dude, that's not even close to what you had 2 years ago. Like, bullet dodged. Yeah,
great. Fun.
So let's get to the last couple of events and see if we have any super chats because I do need to set the show. Look, there's a lot of these questions. We'll keep answering these after we break down Elijah Page.
Yeah, that's
here in a little bit. So we will continue this conversation here in a couple
super
bit.
Chats at the bottom here that I'm going to pull up. I have to find them first. Here we go. Thank you guys for what you do. This is a super chat from Rob Osgood. He says, Green Mountain Dew loves Unite. So obviously a Green Mountain Dew fan.
Yeah.
Which I love that.
There is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Right. And then we've got Tommy Gunn says Green Dew equals BK. Code Red equals Marcus Freeman. Tommy, that's almost bannable.
Are you trying to get banned?
Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, that's just that. Tommy is a great member of our site, but that is one of the worst takes you have ever had. One of the worst and most offensive takes you have ever had in your entire life.
That's harsh, man. I don't know.
Yes.
TA8.
No, if you want to do it that way, Green Mountain Dew's Lou Holtz, right? It's the old, it's the tried and true, it's the traditional, the Code Red's the new hotness.
Okay.
Yes. That would be a much better take. Brian Kelly, I mean, it's like you're just trying to make me mad at this point in time. I feel like that's your objective. And you know what? Mission accomplished, my friend. So, insulting Green Mountain Dew. Crazy.
TA8 with the super chat. Thanks so much, TA. Been listening to you for about a year now. Joined the boards a month or so ago. Appreciate the breakdown of everything Irish related. It's helped me understand the game better. That's the goal, man. Like that is one of our founding principles, right? I mean, that's what Irish Breakdown's all about.
It's kind of funny. So how Irish Breakdown name started. I think this would be a great way to end unless there's a couple more super chats.
And then,
so what's the other super chat? And we'll bring this one back.
Thank you. Frankly, it just said from Troll Hunter, it says, Brian, my formal apologies. I lost a board bet with the Stinky.
The Stinky? What was the board bet? I'd be curious what that bet was. So how the name came about? What's funny is, Vince, you know this answer, but the name came about because Angela, my wife, came up with it.
Right.
And so what happened was when we first launched the site, we had the Irish. It was Irish Maven, which I didn't love, but whatever. That's what we inherited, right?
Right, exactly.
And we were starting part of the new network, but I just never loved it. And so we're starting a new podcast. And kind of going on my own podcast, and Vince and I were eventually going to do it. So Vince was talking to me at the time, even though I did a little tampering, okay, did a little transfer portal tampering,
right?
But kind of thinking of the name, and Angela goes, "Well, what's your show going to be about?" And I explained it to her, and she goes, "What about Irish Breakdown?" I said, "Well, why would you call it that?" She goes, "Well, isn't that what you kind of do? You break everything down, you help people understand it." And I was like, "That's perfect." And so then after that, we launched the podcast. And after that, I was like, I'd like all of this to be Irish Breakdown. So then I worked with SI and said, hey, this is how I want the site to be named. And so I own Irish Breakdown, and it goes with me wherever I am. We love the relationship we have with SI and Fan Nation now. We're happy with it. But Irish Breakdown is kind of our thing. And it to me, it's who we are, right? That's what I think makes us different. And it's just, we want to break things down. We want to make the game. We want you to understand at a level that you maybe you didn't before, or deeper. Even if you did understand the game, you understand it deeper. And so that way, one of the best compliments we ever get is when people say, hey, I enjoy watching the game so much more now than I did before.
Exactly.
And that's one of the best compliments, other than just, saying something about me as a person. That's one of the best compliments that I can get is that right there.
No question about
So,
it.
Vince, let's wrap it up because we got to go start getting ready for this other show. We will be back here, folks, in about 40 minutes. We're going to go live at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So we're going to go live here in about 40 minutes. We're going to have Elijah Page on the show. He is going to talk about his decision to commit to Notre Dame. So we are very much looking forward to that. And he's very excited about this decision. And we'll talk about why Notre Dame took this commitment. What does he bring to the class? What's next for Notre Dame? And go from there. So you're gonna definitely want to join us in 40 minutes. We'll be back for that. You're gonna really enjoy, I think, listening to Elijah. He's a very engaging young man, very talented player, and Ryan and I will be there to talk about his film and go everything. And we will make sure that his phone is charged. There's no doubt about it. So I did tell CJ last night after the show that you all said I should get him an NIL deal where we get him an IB phone charger. The only problem is I don't have IB phone chargers.
Yeah, right.
We'll work on it. So
Get a sticker and you just put one on there.
There you go. It doesn't really charge the phone, but it looks like one, So, so we just crudely pasted your logo over my brand. Ricky Bobby. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Vince and Ryan, for covering for me Vince and Ryan for covering for me for the first hour. And appreciate all of your patience for the fix. We're trying to get the board fixed. We don't know what's going on, but we will have it fixed as soon as possible. But we'll be back at 4 o'clock. Make sure you join us, 4 p.m. Eastern, for our interview with Elijah Page and our breakdown of his commitment to Notre Dame, commitment number 15 in the 2023 class. So we'll see you all then. So for Ryan, for Vince, thank you all again so much for being with us in the Irish Breakdown Podcast.